Sir, you're charged with especially aggravated kidnapping. You're also charged with aggravated assault, and you're charged with theft of a firearm worth less than $2,500.
You're talking about stuff that is not relevant.
Hello and welcome to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict, and boy, do I have a case for you today.
Why is the dog chewing on this guy?
I think they have got the wrong guy
They
there.
got the wrong guy, and the dog was biting him.
He roughened him up quite a bit. There's a lawsuit.
9 out of 10 judges prefer watching the Recovery Addict live stream in their courtroom.
The fireworks are not done.
Now we're doing commentary on the case.
Scratch all that. Oh, that was terrible. I apologize.
Oh, for Trump's sake.
Alrighty, welcome back to the Court of Public Opinion. I am the Recovery Addict. Welcome back. Oh, wow. Did not get any sleep. Why? Because all you bros know I didn't get any sleep. I was over on Randy's channel, and it was a little funny. It was a little bit funny. Welcome. Good to have all of you here, especially a big shout out to SF in Texas, who was first in chat today with a big old, oh crap. It was me, right? SF in Texas. First in chat. And is there water pressure now? Yes, there is. Because I took a shower and I got my hair cut all during the break. I mean, there's almost none left. I'm feeling it's not really so much a haircut as it's a weight loss program at this point. I had so much of it. I just had to have it go. So yeah, I have not combed it yet. It's just this is yeah. All right, welcome. I was sleeping in Brandy's room a little bit. I tried, but it was a little bit fun. It was hard to sleep through the comments, which were hilarious. Hello, fellow Brandy bros. Yes, those are here from Brandy's stream. Welcome, bro. Good to see you. All right, we have fun happening in everything except our courtroom, because we're waiting for the prosecutors to finish, and they've been taking their time on the opening. I think they're pushing 2 hours. Bro.
This is not Burger King. People do not get to have it their way.
They don't. Got bro on the TV. That's a funny trial. Brandy does such a great job. I absolutely love her. She's amazing podcast host as well, because she's got the Canton Files. I think what is it called? Canton Conspiracy. Is that what it is? Podcast. She's also got obviously her YouTube channel, and she's doing a great job. Mr. Fix It. Happy 29th birthday. Thank you. Experience. How did you know? How do you know it was my 29th? I appreciate that. I'm a bro too. Everyone's a bro. Yeah, it's more like, oh crap, the state isn't done yet as of in Texas. Oh, I have to be here because, yeah. Oh, crap. Sorry about that. All right, we'll be back to court shortly, and we do anticipate one of two things happening.
Judge?
Either the judge calls it for the day, which is all right. I'm cool with him doing that. I'm cool with him just saying, hey, look, guys, I'm not a camel. I can't hold it. And with no water in the building, all of you the shared jurors' toilet is full. It's had its one flush. Now we're really in a tight spot, and so we need to just go. Hey, well, podcast.
This is not Burger King. People do not get to have it their way.
They do not. They don't even get indoor plumbing, which I think is fair. If I should have to go without indoor plumbing, so should court. But yeah. All right. Great birthday weekend. Excited. Thank you I wish I could thank individually everyone who's wished me a happy birthday. I've had birthday cards. I've had birthday texts, birthday emails, a million and one birthday chats. You guys have been incredibly super generous with super chats, super stickers, gifted memberships. I really, really feel the love. Thank you so much. This is a wonderful birthday present. I appreciate all of you. Whatever you gave, whether it was just a hat, like a tip to hat hello, or you gifted a membership or anything else. Thank you so much. I'm surprised they didn't recess over fire code. Yes. Oh my goodness. Can you believe the judge? He's like, hey, if the alarm goes off here in this public building, if the fire alarm goes off, you just ignore it. Just stay here. We're pretty sure it's a drill. We think it's related to the fact that there's no water to put out fires, but we don't think there's a fire. So just put your fingers in your ears and just wait it out. and we'll just fly with that unless we smell smoke. Oh man, what great advice from an elected official. Ignore the fire alarm. Man, that never goes well. Amy Detloff, happy birthday, RA. Watch you on the daily. You rock. Keep up the fantastic work. Thank you, Amy. Thank you. Okay, we have Courtney Meek has indoor plumbing marked safe from having water shut off. I have some indoor plumbing, just not the key parts. See, AWOL, I just detected roots growing in my sewer line from a house, so I understand.
I don't know who won.
Well, that's actually, I mean, it's an expensive fix usually because they have to like clean the line. They run that little drill, and then they can actually put a liner in. They can like do a blown-in liner all the way down, and it's good to go. Technology's come a long way since you had to dig up a sewer line to replace it. Oh, is the email the one on the channel? Silly question, but I just want to make sure I sent it the right one. Yes, it is, Pauline, and I check it about once a month whether or not I have an email. So if you do send something that's time sensitive, you might want to reach out to me another method as well, if possible. Maybe a chat. Just tag me like you've done here. Casey Bamagal. Thank you very much, Casey Bamagal. So many well wishes. I appreciate every single one of you. We're about to get going back in court. Nogales is used to little water pressure from no water pressure. Always sewage, water problems. You could not put toilet paper in toilets in Nogales. Man.
I was kicked back, taking it easy.
That's down. Basically, that's the part of Arizona where this case is taking place. So, Danny Austin, Martha Ivy, Jeff Lagoy, everyone. I thank you for the birthday wishes. Krista, with the lightning, love it. RBG, happy birthday. Appreciate your channel. Thank you, RBG. Appreciate that very much. Tess Hurd says a member for 3 months says happy birthday. Happy birthday to me. Thank you, Tess. I appreciate that. I'm sorry if I'm taking some of the spotlight from some of the other many people who have birthdays today and this weekend, especially because I'm claiming it Monday as well. I really am. I'm gonna have like the bookends of the birthday weekend. Happy birthday weekend. My son's birthday is Monday. All right, we'll celebrate with him, Tisha. I'm excited for that. So happy, just found out I can use Starlink satellite for internet at the lake house. Guess who's going to move to the lake? Paula Mack, that is wonderful. I debated going to Starlink, but they didn't have the upload speed that I needed for all of this. And I didn't want to have to buy 2 of them and bond them together. All right. Thank you, all of you. We're waiting for a feedback. Oh, you found your cord. Yay. What? Which one? It might. Depends on which battery you have. Because it has to be USB-C. Okay, then it'll work. All right. Let me feel the cord. Which one is that? Yeah, you can use that one. You sure that's it? Yep, it works. That works. All right, Starlink is the bomb, says Spicy Vet Med Geek. When I worked for the IRS, they wouldn't let us out for bomb scares. We'd never get any work done if they did. It was scary to ignore people with dogs searching our desks. When I worked for the government, we had an active shooter drill, and there were some of us who were designated as essential employees, but essential in an active shooter situation. So while everyone else has to leave the building and try to flee and get out, we're supposed to stay working. Which means we're just sitting targets for the person who goes through with the toy gun and goes bang, 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 and points at you. And you're like, oh, you got me. I'm dead, which means, can I stop working now? No, I have to keep working. There's no benefit. But they get to count us on their check mark list of this is how many people failed. It's a bad deal. And we're like, okay, look, if I have to stay here, if I have to sit here and work, they say you're supposed to, run, hide, fight, right? And if I have to stay here and I'm not allowed to hide and I can't run, can I at least fight the dude and throw a chair or something and make it like a real drill? They wouldn't want any of that either. Apparently they wanted nobody to do the fight part. But it's always fun to see. Oh, he's on my aisle now. Here he comes. All right. Hey, yep, got me. Tag, I'm it. But it was fun. All right, only because we knew it was a drill and everyone knew ahead of time what was going on. Court is supposed to be back here in about 3 minutes, 2 or 3 minutes, and we are hoping, fingers crossed, that one of two things happens. Either the state, somebody from the state woke up and jumped online and looked at any of the chat rooms for any of the live streams covering this case, and saw that there was a overwhelming sense of you lost me at hello. That everyone is just feeling, because this is literally, it feels like the longest open we've ever seen in a court case, and maybe it's just the way that the delivery is going. It's not resonating with a lot of people from what we can see here. So hopefully that the state's going to be like, you know what, there's more, but there's more, but we won't go into it now. We'll just move on. I did see this news out of Moscow. Oh my goodness. A huge terror attack over there is what's been said. The theater, lots and lots of casualties. So prayers for them. That is a terrible situation. You share a birthday with my brother-in-law. He's much older than you, though. He must be like, what, 30? Just kidding. No. Angela, I've got a lot of work done, so I'm not complaining. I'm stringing along. I'm waiting for our court feed to come back up. So there's nothing we can do until we find out. And other than possibly maybe some locals. Anyone local? Let's see. We've got a couple locals here. Just 1 second. Laura is local. Are you out of water too, Laura? Thanks for the first chat, by the way. I appreciate that. Not in chat, but you do listen, so that's great. Another homeschool mom. Let's see. I share my birthday with your mother, who'll be 94. That is awesome. 94 years young that is really, really cool. Wendy, I don't believe the prosecutor's done. I did drift off right at the very end of her comments, just because of the exhausting work it was to inspect the inside of my eyelids to see if there were any light leaks. I drifted off a bit, just resting from that laborious undertaking. But I don't think she said, and we will hope you'd find him guilty. I don't think she never got to her big finish. But all right. As far as the weekend goes, what are your plans? I'm going to plumb. Wendy, I'm sure there's somebody got some screenshots or some clips. I'm sure 2IO Toys is it's got like a half-hour montage of me just snoring on a live stream. Krista, it's a different style. I don't know what school teaches this as far as law school goes, but it's not a common one in any of the trials we've seen so far. We've seen some long and some boring intros, but long and boring and still going. This one might just take the cake. All right. Is a rebuttal open? They get an open, and then the prosecution the defense gets an open, and then do they get a rebuttal open? No. We should send a pickup. No, don't do that. Don't do that. She laid out all the evidence. It's almost like, imagine if she was afraid that tomorrow morning when she wakes up, like by magic, the evidence leprechaun will have stolen everything out of the locker room, the evidence locker room. And she's like, if I don't get it in now, it will be gone forever. And so she's just like dumping everything out there. And in the process, she's rehashing to make sure she got everything. And it's, I don't know, maybe I'm completely off base. I've done this before. But maybe the jury is just like hanging on her every word and just like waiting for that one more time that she tells the exact same story, just a tiny bit differently. Be like, yeah, now that's starting to click. Maybe that makes sense. The judge has interrupted her 2 times. He's like, look, we need a break. We've swapped out translators. Our court recorder is ready to quit. She just texted me a 2-week notice. Do you think you might be able to wrap up soon? Yeah. When I get really sleepy, which you guys know I do, when I get really sleepy, all I do is I just switch to the small camera right here, and then I try to keep my hand moving so it looks like I'm awake I'm giving away my secrets here, guys. I shouldn't do that, but that's what I do. All right. She opens like a pack for the trip. Triple check. She remembered everything. She's covering it. She's playing it safe. She's not going to sit down and have any regrets as far as, but I should have said. That won't happen. She's pretty much secured that. Losing the jury. I think the jury might have lost it. Remember how eager the jury was, Krista? The judge was saying, welcome, jurors, welcome, come on in, take your seats. And he's like, oh, wait, we have a question. The jurors were on it. They're like, we want to be involved. We are curious. We have questions. And now they don't. They had 2 questions before the open, and now they have none. So I guess, I don't think it would be appropriate for them to ask questions during the open anyway, but either way, my hair grew a 1/4 inch during that opening. I lost a little over an inch myself. Oh, Lavender, hope your daughter does great. I'm sure you've got some fabulous doctors that will make everything right. Tummy surgery on Monday. Tell her we're thinking of her. All the best. Did I drink a Mountain Dew over lunch? No, I didn't. I just got my hair cut and took a shower and ate like 2 slices of cheese. That was it. So I'm going to crash again as soon as the energy from the cheese is gone. Court reporter has carpal tunnel. Release surgery booked already. Why use many words when few words do trick? Wise man once said. I think that was a wise woman that once said. We are ready for the evidence. The only thing we haven't had is evidence ASMR in the opening. That's the only thing we'll have in the trial, I think, that we haven't heard already. Jury question, can you please end? Signed, all of us. Oh, man. I think it would be funnier if there was an honest jury question that came in that was like, how many days is reserved for opening? How many days does this go on? When does the trial start? Can I skip until then? Since this part isn't evidence, is it all right if I miss this part? Did I check my cards over lunch? What cards? Do I have cards? Like the post office? I don't think I did. Oh, Canva. Okay, there we go. We can do a quick check on the birthday card and see what I guess cards, because it sort of multiplied. I gave you access and I gave an inch and you took a mile is what happened. Okay, group birthday project. Let's bring this over on 3. Let's see. This is starting to look good. This is like Hallmark worthy right here. Let's see. Here we go. Birthday card, page 1. Happy birthday with the balloons. A tradition, what you might call a traditional birthday with streamers. I think there's a noose holding the happy birthday sign. But looks good. It fits. We've got the balloons, the party hats. Yay, we've got have to celebrate appropriately. We've got the sparklers, birthday cake, the balloon dog, a little symbol, YouTube. It looks great. I love it. There's one. Happy B-Day. Don't give up on your dreams. Eagle with a pickle. Eagle with the pickle and a caterpillar riding the pickle. Happy B-Day. That is hilarious. Happy B-Day. Let's see. Here we've got happy birthday. Just golden. Looks golden. Is that drawn by hand? It looks like hand drawn. It's very impressive. Here's another one. Happy birthday. He's the guy. What more?
Because he's the guy.
What more?
What more do you need to see?
Right. Exactly. We've got cake, pickles, court, lots of balloons. Thanks for not making the black. Age counter 46. I think that's close. It might be within a year, so I'll have to do the math. There's desk. There's my desk minus a little electronics, but the cable's there. And a little kitty. Love it. Let's see who this one is. Happy birthday, dear Olivia. Happy birthday, dear Olivia. There you go. Happy birthday. Let's see. A diamond mining mole.
This is
metal
not
detecting.
Burger King. People do not get to have it their way.
Metal detecting. This particular metal detector appears to be a Garrett maybe an Ace 100 model. A few extra wraps than the cable has, but other than that, it's good. I see the bugs, lots of bugs. That's very fitting. And a little Kansas. Who fit the Kansas City in here? Who slid that little Kansas City arrowhead in there? That which is awesome. I love it. Caterpillar, great. You guys did a great job. Great job on all the birthday cards. Thank you very much for the greatness that they are. Okay, let's see. We're going to go back to, they're not back yet. Let's check some other guys. They're not back yet. Nobody's back yet. That's good. They aren't back yet. We're just waiting. We're in a holding pattern right now. Sounds like dad thinking his 3-year-old for their cards. Greeners, you're outing me. No, the quality was top notch. Of course, it was top notch. The card needs a bowl of milk and a piece of upside down cake. I think I should talk my family into getting me cake today, tomorrow, my birthday, and on Monday, since it is my birthday weekend.
I totally agree.
My son says he'll vote for that as well. So I think I could get all the kids to vote with me and see if we can get. Well, it would probably be my daughter that makes it. But I do have strict requirements. It has to be a 0 eggshell cake. I don't do eggshells in cake. Okay, we have some video coming back from the court. We're just waiting for action. So far, nothing. And then audio.
I know, it's a good thing you had that.
We won't spy on them quite just yet. Did the judge already give up and flee to Mexico? No. Actually, I do want to listen and see if they talk about the water. Oh, of course they stop. They turned it off. A no eggshell cake coming right up. Thanks, CBD. Eggshells and cake makes the cake a little crunchy. Just a little bit. The judge said 1:30 for a return time. I could have taken a nap. Like a legitimate nap, Kenny? I thought he said 1:15. Oh, man. They are going to get the pipe fixed, and then we're in for the long haul. I vote for cake, but it's Lent. Can't have any cake. Give it up for Lent. No cake. No cake for you. Maybe he messed with the water himself to get her to stop talking. This prosecutor, I'm sure, is a great prosecutor. Every single court case, we see lawyers, whether they're on the prosecution or on the defense, and they have some amazing skills. They're either really good at say, openings or closings or cross-examinations or direct examinations, sometimes with hostile witnesses. They all have their area where they score like above the rest, right? And I'm looking forward to seeing what the prosecutor here excels at, because I think the delivery, the content and the delivery are just not they're not doing it for me. But okay. Since I have the YouTube app on my phone, my naps are way too short. Let's see. Let me see if I can get this fixed here. We've got a couple things I need to adjust. It is live there. Man, that haircut's looking good. Did I miss any spots? Just kidding. I didn't do it myself. Mrs. R.A. cuts my hair. Does a great job. She excels at brevity. Soon she's going to show off her skills. It is a 1:30 start time, so we do have a few more minutes to shoot the breeze here. 2 more minutes at least. Cindy Snyder, welcome to the gallery. Can we watch the other thing you saved? We can jump over to, let's see, where would that be? Let's see, my channel. Your clips. I don't know. I'll watch later.
Your stomach went out. You're like, oh.
Oh, yeah.
They just came back. They just came back.
Yeah, yeah.
So we were always trying to settle.
Yeah.
Hey, can you
Yeah. I know. These are so much easier. We have our backup, here in case.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's all we. I'm gonna get. You know what? For my own use, I think I'm gonna get the live view, the smaller one.
Oh yeah.
They're cute. They're like $700, and you can
really?
like literally, you got a camera, you can plug in, and you can do a live feed.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
She's talking about getting a live view. She says they're $700.
Take it. Yeah, we can just play around.
Just do that.
They're $2,100.
But there's a smaller version.
Yeah.
That's all you need.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Yeah. I just saw that yesterday. I was like, oh man, I need one.
Hang on 1 second. We're gonna bring the video up.
Oh, I have a Rick, but it's right here. Do you wanna? I've got a couple of free plugins. What was that? Yeah, we're good. Yeah.
The headphones I'm rocking are SR850s by Samson. I think they were like $35, but they don't squeeze my head.
So, Kelly's ran.
SR850s. I buy mine from Sweetwater or from B&H Photo. You can also get them on Amazon. I'll give you a link to Amazon. How about that?
There's probably articles where it says.
I know. The articles probably have it like
but who
both
knows?
ways.
Yeah, you can. Craig would probably know. You can ask him.
I almost want to say
He's pretty detailed.
on the outskirts of town.
Yeah, because it's a ranch. It's not like.
Yeah, it's not like it's in residential.
I've purchased these headphones from Amazon 3 times. And at least 4 sets from B&H Photo.
Hey, that works.
That's pretty
That
general.
actually covers it. I like that.
All right, here we go. Okay, there's the link to the headphones on Amazon. These are the ones I'm wearing right now. I love them. They're open back, so they don't kill the noise around me. I can hear when my family walks in or when the phone rings or people walk in and out of the house. It doesn't block the sound out. But they also don't squeeze my head. I can wear these all day long, and it just doesn't hurt, which is great. Haley's Comet, happy birthday. Thank you. Member for 9 months. Appreciate that, Haley's Comet.
Definitely haven't gotten the jury.
It was nice of the judge to come over.
Me neither.
Oh, did you get Kyle the card?
Yes, I did.
Okay, is he going to edit the file?
I didn't have time to talk about that with him.
Eta Deus is God in riches.
Oh, well, we might have another break before.
Well, I want to minimize going down to security.
I mean, all you have to do is yourself personally go out. You need to bring all your stuff out.
On your feet. On your feet, judges here. That bailiff. 2 reporters are talking about having to go in and out of the building and not wanting to carry all their stuff through security. And one of them is talking about getting a live view so they can just go live from wherever they are. Libby, keyword being again, 39 again.
Please rise, por favor.
6 is half written.
Thank you. Everyone, please be seated.
right, back on the record, show the presence of all counsel, defendant, and all the jurors. So you know the good news, water's back on. Thank you for your understanding, not that you had a lot of choice in the matter, understanding, patience, and cooperation. And we also sent the cleaning crew back up there afterwards and cleaned the whole thing out. And we had a great crew, so hopefully everything's back.
TMI.
All right, before we get going, I just want to
TMI.
talk briefly with counsel, real quick, on something. If you put your headsets on.
They have their headsets on. When the headsets are on, we're not supposed to be able to see or hear. You might hear some white noise like that. And let me tell you what's happening. The judge is like, look, I've presided over a lot of cases. I've been judge here for a lot of years, and never have I ever had a case have an opening as long and boring as this one. Can you please tell me that there's light at the end of the tunnel? Can you find maybe just a stopping point and just let somebody else go for a little bit? It would be great if you could just make that happen because this is too much. This is a Friday after all. This is a Friday. It's the jurors' first day, their first experience in court, and you're hitting them with the 3-hour lecture in monotone. The only thing you haven't done is use the PowerPoint. So really, this is actually a crime in and unto itself. So if you don't hurry and land the plane, you might find yourself in contempt. I'm just saying. So
On the record with the jury, and whenever the state is ready, you can proceed. Continue with your opening statement.
Don't start over. Heaven forbid. Please don't start over. He's not saying that. He was not saying that.
So good afternoon, everyone. We were talking about this visual that is up on the screen now, and the reason why I was showing you this visual again is I wanted to tell you that you're going to hear some testimony from 2 officers from the Department of Public Safety from the aerial photographs, and they also did something called a Leica scan of the area. And a Leica scan is a more detailed type of analysis where they take really detailed measurements so that they can do measurements of the scene that are accurate.
Leica or LiDAR?
And so this is the drone photo with the measurements, but you'll also hear from a Sergeant Captain who did the Leica scan for us as well. And then again, as I indicated, Trooper Reyna is going to testify about the drone footage.
When she says "and again," you can skip that part.
The next officers you're going to hear from are an FBI agent who assisted the detectives in downloading Mr. Kelly's cell phone. Our detectives aren't up to speed, or weren't at the time up to speed on some new cell phone data called Cellbrite. And that data, that software is what we use to download people's cell phones. So we can look at their text messages, their photos, and their phone calls, those sorts of things. And so the FBI, you'll hear from the FBI agent who assisted with that download, and you'll hear from Detective Mario Barba. He's actually the tall detective that was in that photograph you saw. So you'll meet him when he comes in to talk about those cell phone downloads. And he did something called a physical download of the defendant's cell phone. You'll learn that the defendant's cell phone was kind of an older model phone, so the Cellbrite software wasn't actually able to open it because the software was old on it. And so what we actually had to do was go through the phone and physically examine and take photographs of things as opposed to the normal download we would do.
What?
And you're going to hear about some of those text messages. No. And they really give you some insight into what was happening with George Kelly in the weeks leading up to the homicide. And you'll see this is just sort of a flavor of those text messages, and you'll see all of them as we go through the testimony from Detective Barba and Agent Douglas.
Welcome, Bro 13th
this is kind
jurors.
Of the flavor.
Bro 13th? Is it Bro 13th
to
jurors?
his friend a couple of weeks before the homicide saying, overrun with drug cartel, AK getting a lot of work. Pick of drug runner carpet tracks, and one of the CBP agents will explain what carpet tracks are to you. Those are essentially booties that migrants use to try to cover their sign as they're walking through the desert. They call them carpet.
Your Honor, can we have a conference briefly?
Prosecution is, I mean, what did I say? That was an objection. That was an objection. I think this is a slang term for the type of footwear they wear to hide their footsteps, that obscures the footsteps in the dirt. So, welcome in, bros, also known as the 13th Jurors. Wonderful to have you here. But oh my, did you hear that little tidbit of the Cellbrite? They said you've got this Cellbrite data. We did the download and everything, and it turns out that the phone was too old and it wouldn't work, so we had to do it manually, which means they had to go through page at a time, click at a time, taking screenshots. This is going to be the most, that has got to be the most painful way to go through any phone, especially something that literally has everything stored in a database inside it. You're taking it from a database to screenshots, and then you're going to try to what? Redigitize it and make it something searchable? Or did you just pour through every screenshot of every text message of that? That has got to be terrible. Absolutely terrible. Now I know how my English teachers felt when they told me not to write novels as papers. You hear that beep? See how quiet that was? I taped over the speaker. I did that in the middle of the night when I had to go outside. I'm like, I don't want to wake everybody up. I thought they were done. Here we go.
Back on the record with the jury, you can continue.
They've changed the batteries like 3 times in that microphone.
As I was saying, the first text message talks about Mr. Kelly on January 13th of 2023, which is just 2 weeks before the homicide, is texting his friend Gary Miller, overrun with drug cartel, AK getting a lot of work. And then
Jackson
the second
was overruled.
one, pic of drug runner carpet tracks, 33 dealt with this week, AKA hot, AK hot. And then you'll see there's actually a text to his son on that same day. His son is Matt Kelly. And that text message says, 33 drug runners this week. Pic attached is of drug runner carpet booties. AK-47 hot. Wanna be backup. And his son responds with a note and a hand emoji with the thumb down. And he says, be careful. And Mr. Kelly responds, careful is not an option. It's either fight or run, and I'm too old to run. Is L&L or locked and loaded also?
That's a
So
pretty
that's some of the
tough
text
one.
messages that you're going to see. And you're also going to hear from a number of expert witnesses in this case. One of the expert witnesses you're going to hear from is Aaron Brunel, and he's a weapons specialist. He's going to come in and talk to you about the functionality of the AK-47, that it actually works. He's going to tell you that the AK-47 matches to the casings that were located on the defendant's patio, that we showed you those 9 casings earlier in the photographs. He's going to talk about something called an ejection pattern for the AK-47. He's going to talk to you about, and what that means essentially is when the spent casings eject from the AK-47, what pattern do they normally land in? That's called an ejection pattern. So he'll talk to you about what the ejection pattern for this weapon is, and you'll learn why that's important from the experts as they testify.
Welcome, Donna.
He's also going to talk
Brandy.
to you about an examination of the
Thanks for
victim's
joining us.
clothing. He's going to tell you that he didn't see any soot or any stippling, and what that tells you is that this was not a close-up shot. We know it wasn't a close-up shot. We know Mr. Kelly shot from his back patio, but this just confirms that determination. Next, you're going to hear from 2 other experts from the Arizona Department of Public Safety Crime Lab, and they're both forensic scientists as well. And these 2 forensic scientists did
Just
some
picked
work
up the pace.
essentially just to check the boxes to make sure. We don't expect that on a casing we're going to find any DNA or any fingerprints. And that's because of how hot it is inside the weapon. That just burns off any DNA or any fingerprints. But we went ahead and checked those casings anyway for fingerprints and DNA, And we didn't find any fingerprints on the casings, and we also preserved whatever was on the casings as far as DNA goes. But again, just a checkbox, not really expecting to find anything. The next outside expert witness you're going to hear from is a man named Rick Wyant. And Rick Wyant is also a forensic scientist. He has his own consulting company, but he also works for a state crime lab in another state. Mr. Wyant is the shooting reconstructionist in this case. He's the ballistics expert. And he's going to talk to you about the shooting reconstruction and also about something called bullet wobble. You'll see that he'll talk to you a little bit about how the shape of the entry wound is for the gunshot wound, and that there was a little bit of wobble on that. And he'll explain to you what that could be caused by. Hitting a little branch or something like that along the way, on the way that it hit.
Possible ricochet.
The next expert witness you're going to hear from is Tara Telsell. And Ms. Telsell is a scientist from RJ Lee Labs. And you'll hear that this information that she's going to provide you comes from trace examination of the victim's clothing. And this was, again, just to determine if this is a close-up shot or a far shot, and she'll explain to you what her findings are when she's here. You're also going to hear from the medical examiner from the Pima County Medical Examiner's Office that did the forensic autopsy of Gabriel in this case. And she's going to describe for you the injuries to the victim in this case. And I'm going to show you a couple of photographs from the autopsy that show you the entry and the exit wound. This is the entry wound on Gabriel's back, and Dr. Tim will explain to you all of the dimensions of the wound and what that means. And this is the exit wound on Gabriel's chest. And she'll explain to you again what all of the measurements mean and how she knows which is entry and which is exit wound. The other thing she's going to tell you is that she didn't find any stippling or any soot around the entry wound in this case. And again, that's an indication that this is not a close-up shot. And then finally, she's going to talk to you about the path of the projectile in this case. She's going to talk to you about how the projectile entered through these three ribs back here and essentially blew out those ribs and traveled through the ribs, through the right lung, through the pericardial sac, through the ascending aorta, through the sternum, through the parasternal anterior left second rib, and then out. And she's going to give you all the details about that injury and what that means in terms of how long he might have lived, what that means with respect to how he could have responded immediately following the shooting. She'll tell you all about those details. But the one thing that I want to make sure I leave you with is that when we're talking about the evidence in this case, I want to remind you of the words of George Allen Kelly. And I want to remind you that Mr. Kelly told you, I'm not admitting to anything I've done, but all those things tend to add up. And they do add up in this case. And they add up to second-degree murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. All of the items of evidence point toward that. We've got the ballistics and the bullet trajectory, the medical examiner's testimony, the fact that Gabriel's body is 115 yards away from the Kelly residence, the fact that Kelly says that the individuals he saw were 100 to 150 yards away from his residence, the location of the casings, the ejection pattern that you'll learn about from the experts, the information about the horse that you hear from Daniel and that is corroborated by the defendant's conversation with Jeremy Morcell. The fact that no one heard that alleged first shot except George Allen Kelly. There's no soot or stippling on the wounds, indicating this is not a close-up shot. And Kelly admits that he shot his AK-47, and we have matched the casings by his patio to his AK-47. And Kelly admits that these people weren't coming toward his house. They weren't approaching him. They weren't any kind of threat to him. They were going parallel to his residence. And I just mentioned the AK-47 matched the casings. And then finally, you'll have the testimony of Daniel, who will tell you what he observed that day. And all of those things will lead you to find that the state has proven beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant is guilty of these charges. The state's evidence will leave you firmly convinced of the defendant's guilt in this case. The defendant has told the officer that he was conscious of the consequences of his actions and he would take responsibility for those actions.
Thank you, Cher Bear. 12
We're going to
months.
ask you to hold him to that and to find him guilty at the end of this trial of these two charges.
There we go.
Second-degree murder with the death of Gabriel
That was the
Cuen
finish.
Buitimea, and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon for Daniel Ramirez. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hunley. Does the defense wish to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready.
See, here you can use my microphone. It's like, no, it's okay. Use the court's existing system.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me? These are working. Okay. If I start to get too quiet or these stop working, just wave at me. So I want to make sure we can hear what's being said here.
Thank you, Corn Dog.
You guys haven't heard much from me yet. My name's Brenda Larkin. I represent George Allen Kelly. And that's who I want to talk to you about today.
Gain's a little high
Because
on
the
these.
state talks a lot here today about what they say happened on January 30th of last year. And I want to talk about everything that led up to that incident so that you have an idea and you can put that incident into context when you're actually hearing the evidence. And the evidence is going to describe some of Mr. Kelly's background. The evidence is going to show that Mr. Kelly is born in the Carolinas.
Hey.
He grew up always in rural areas. He's always hunting, he's always fishing, mostly fishing. That's his life ever since he's a young boy. And he goes to college, graduates college, he marries Wanda, who's his high school sweetheart, and they start a life together, he and his wife. Mr. Kelly works with Fish and Wildlife for a very long time. It allows him to be outdoors, it allows him to be in nature, it allows him to be close to the things that he loves and doing the things that he loves. Eventually, he and Wanda decide to move to Montana because he takes a job out there and the trout fishing in Montana is the best in the whole world. That's why he wants to be there. He winds up working for Fish and Wildlife on an Indian reservation and working with the tribe that's out there. Eventually, the state takes over the tribal land and his job no longer exists for him out in Montana. He's offered positions in different places, but all of those positions are desk jobs in a city, which to him is just not something that he can do. So he and his wife decide to stay in Montana, and they open up a lodge. They open up an Orvis Lodge that involves taking people on guided trips to go fishing, to go hunting, and they operate that as a family for many, many years. He and his wife have 2 sons. The sons help work on the lodge as well, and they're all very happy. Wanda's a school teacher. Mr. Kelly really, really likes living in Montana.
Thank you, JK.
Wanda
Appreciate it.
thinks
14
it's too
months.
cold. And Wanda has always wanted to move to Arizona, ever since she was a child. She saw pictures of Arizona in a book, and that was her dream. So she and Alan, and I'm going to call him Alan, he's George Allen Kelly, but Mr. Kelly is his father, and nobody calls him George, so if I call him Alan, that's who I'm talking about. Alan and Wanda made a deal. Alan said to Wanda, if you come with me to Montana, and if you live here for as long as we can for our career, for my career, and if you support me, then after a certain amount of time, I'll move with you to Arizona. And eventually, Wanda holds him to that, and they come to Arizona. They first go through Flagstaff, but Wanda sees snow, so they have to keep going further south. And eventually they wind up down in southern Arizona. They don't purchase the property where he's at right away. They have some other ranching property nearby that's in a different location at first. But eventually they purchase the property where this incident took place. And they purchased that property many, many years ago. I believe 20 or so years ago is when they actually purchased that property. So he and Wanda have been out there for a very long time. They had to build their house there. They had to fence the whole property in order to put cattle on the property to run their ranch. And they've been living there ever since. It's the dream home, and that's where they want to be. Alan, not being from here and never living close to the border, never really knew anything about illegal immigration. It just wasn't something that was in his mind when he came down here. He had his first experience, his first encounter ever with illegal immigrants when he was putting up fence posts trying to fence his property. He and a couple of folks were helping him build the fence, and he describes stumbling upon a group of people. And he didn't really know what was happening. He'd never encountered something like this before. But he saw this group of people. The group of people looked scared when he and his workers ran into them. And he just remembers in the moment thinking, this is strange, and they look scared. So he said, "Está bien." He has limited Spanish now, but he knows how to tell them it's okay. And his first impression, he was confused, and the folks who were helping him build his fence tell him, "Oh, those are illegal aliens. That's what you just saw." And so he had to start learning about what that was. That was never something that he'd ever encountered before. And he describes that first encounter as very heartbreaking to him. He saw people, and he saw families, and he saw that people were hurting. He saw that people were desperate, and he saw that people were scared. And that was the first impression he had of illegals on his property. And he's building the fence. He hasn't put any wire up yet. He learns that it's likely there will be more such people who are coming across his property. And he thinks, well, I mean, that's not great, but what can I do about it? And so he purchases some smooth wire for the fence. The top strands on the fence are barbed wire. The bottom wire is smooth wire. Because he knows if people are going to be coming through, he at least doesn't want anybody to get hurt. Over the years, and again, it's many years he's on this property, over the years he sees some more things start to transpire. He doesn't see people close up very frequently. He sees people from a distance, if he sees people at all. He sees people who are family groups, and he knows they're family groups because they're people who are men, who are women, who are children, all sort of traveling together. In the early days, everybody's wearing ordinary clothing, so no different from the clothing you might see if you just walk around outside today. And in the early days, he doesn't encounter very many problems, and he doesn't feel afraid. He feels these people are actually more afraid of me than I am of them, because they run when they see me, they get scared. He starts to pick up on as he goes out, and he goes out every day on his ranch. He's a cattle rancher. He's out there every day. He sees trails. He sees tracks. He sees different signs throughout the day, every day, of people coming through his property. He sees what he describes as campsites, meaning a place where people stay for longer, perhaps past the night. In these areas, he finds water bottles, he finds clothing, he finds discarded food items, all sorts of things just to tell him, even though I didn't see people, I know people were here because here's signs of people being here. And he learns over the years where these sites are. And over the years, as he's out on his property, if he happens to have a water bottle with him, he'll leave a water bottle at one of those sites because he doesn't want anything bad to happen to anybody on his property. He's a compassionate man, and he doesn't want people on his property, but he understands that people have their own lives and they're trying to do something out of desperation. He starts to communicate with Border Patrol. These ranches that are on the border have a program called a Ranch Liaison Program, and that program involves a person, the ranch liaison, whose job it is to connect with these ranchers on the border, establish rapport, establish communication with them, in order that this rancher who's out here in this vast area can have somebody to access, to talk to, whenever something happens or whenever something is seen. And so over the years, Mr. Kelly becomes familiar with a number of ranch liaisons who cycle through that position. He reports things to the ranch liaison that he sees. He's told by the ranch liaison, you know, if it's a criminal issue, you can call 911. If it's a border issue, so if there's an issue with any kind of illegal immigration on your property, call the ranch liaison. The ranch liaison also sends information to the ranchers. So if the ranch liaison is aware that there's a big group of people in a certain area, if it's near a ranch, the ranch liaison will communicate that to the rancher to say, here's a heads up, I'm letting you guys know there's this number of people in your area, things of that nature. If Mr. Kelly were to ever see a helicopter circling his property, for example, and he doesn't know what's going on, he calls the ranch liaison because that's whose helicopter that is, and they're going to know what's going on, and they'll inform him of what's going on. So Mr. Kelly establishes this relationship and this rapport with Border Patrol over the years. He learns over the years that the response time to his property is not necessarily very fast. So if he calls somebody, he might not get somebody out there for 15 minutes or something like that. And by that time, whoever was there is gone. Whatever he saw is no longer there. That's just the nature of reality on the ground for Mr. Kelly out there. This is all pretty fine and dandy for many, many years. And then things start to change. Mr. Kelly starts to see different things. He's not seeing as many family groups anymore. Mr. Kelly starts to see individuals carrying backpacks. Men, always men, carrying backpacks and going along the fence lines. He knows that these are individuals engaged in illegal activity because when they see him, they run away. Still, people run away from him. And then things change. And things change in a very dangerous and a very frightening way for Mr. Kelly and for his wife. Mr. Kelly starts to see larger groups, and he starts to see larger groups of all men carrying large backpacks. At first, he doesn't see any weapons, but he's seeing a difference. These aren't the same family groups that he saw when he first started living on this property. This is something else. He talks to the ranch liaison, they communicate with him. He learns that there's drugs in this area. There's human trafficking in this area. There are other things going on besides family groups coming through here. The ranch liaison communicate with Mr. Kelly eventually, and they never used to say this before, but they start to say, there's a group in your area, be careful. Don't try to stay, if while there's this group in this area, don't go out. They communicate different messages like that. It used to be you run into a group of people, it's no problem. People might be scared, they might be afraid that you'll report them or something, but this is different. Something has changed. Now there's more fear coming from Mr. Kelly and from his wife. He doesn't know anymore who he's going to run into when he's out on his property. And eventually, over the years, he has a couple encounters where he starts to see weapons. He sees, again, these groups of men carrying backpacks, and this time he'll see a rifle, maybe two rifles. things start to get much more dangerous. This isn't what it used to be. On at least one occasion, somebody takes a shot at Mr. Kelly. Mr. Kelly gets fired at on at least one occasion. On that particular occasion, Mr. Kelly didn't have a rifle with him. He had his pistol with him, which he carried with him a lot, but he didn't have a rifle. And the person who fired the shot was so far away, his pistol would be ineffective. So Mr. Kelly dropped down into the grass and he waited and he hoped. He hoped that nothing further was going to happen. He stayed there for about 15 minutes before he was able to gather himself and come in. Over the years, he's reported a number of incidents to law enforcement involving either seeing people or hearing shots, being approached by people, those sorts of things. Over the years, he's made a number of reports. And typically, the report gets investigated, law enforcement comes, they take Mr. Kelly's statement, they can't find anyone because it took too long for them to get out there, people are gone anyway, and nothing happens other than he's able to report it. But because of this heightened level of danger and this heightened level of risk, Mr. Kelly starts to feel unsafe on his property. And he knows when he goes out, he needs to be armed to protect himself. He also chooses to be armed as a deterrent. He hopes that if people see him, and if they see that he's carrying a rifle, they will leave him alone. And then nothing has to happen. No encounters have to take place. Mr. Kelly does not wish for a violent encounter. This is some of the background coming from Mr. Kelly and his wife. You'll hear them talk about these types of things and what's going on their property. You're also going to hear from a number of different Border Patrol agents who have experience out in that property and in that general area and who know the area. Border Patrol knows what's going on out there. They know which types of people are out there and what they're doing. And this is an area, Mr. Kelly's ranch is about 1.5 miles north, as the crow flies, from the border wall. And you're going to hear something called the end of the wall. You're going to hear that described by witnesses in this case. 1.5 miles south of Mr. Kelly's property is the international border between the United States and Mexico. And there's a wall out there, and then it ends. There's a very tall wall. It's metal. It has razor wire on top. It's pretty big and pretty imposing, pretty difficult to climb over or get around. And then it just stops. That wall just stops. And after that, there's a little barbed wire fence, and there's what are called Normandy barriers, which are sort of metal crisscross things that will stop a vehicle, but they won't stop people. And so you're going to hear that the walls can be effective in moving traffic. So traffic that might come through closer to Nogales now has to move further out and come across here where the wall ends, which is right near Mr. Kelly's property. And so this is a corridor. Mr. Kelly's property is in a corridor of illegal traffic. And you'll hear that that illegal traffic includes human smuggling and drug smuggling. You'll hear that there are different sort of jobs, I suppose, or positions involved with this illegal traffic. There are scouts and their guides, who are people who are working to facilitate both human and drug smuggling. So a scout is a person who's going to typically be stationed at a high point on a mountain with binoculars, who can survey an area visually. They're typically wearing camouflage, typically trying to conceal themselves. And they have a radio with them so that they can see where Border Patrol is, they can see where a group is that might be going through for whatever reason, they can see where the pickup point is, and they can relay this information on the radio to the bad guys on the ground who are trafficking the people or trafficking the drugs through the area. You're also going to hear that out there are guides or coyotes. But the coyotes are the guides, and those are the folks who are guiding groups of people through this area. A guide will have a radio. A guide might be listening on the radio to a scout or to somebody else. A guide will be responsible for bringing either people or people who are carrying drugs or just people to a certain location. You're also going to hear that there are other groups out there that are called either rip crews or bandits, depending on which term you prefer. But there are groups of people out there who try to take advantage of the illegal traffic that's going on. These are people who might confront somebody who's carrying drugs with weapons, steal the drugs from the person who's carrying drugs. These are people who might confront these migrant groups and rob them, because this type of crime doesn't really get reported. If somebody's a migrant and they're in here, they're very vulnerable. If the bad guys go and rob them, it's not frequent that that's reported. So this is just the general character of the type of crime that's happening in this rural area that's out east of Nogales, very near Mr. Kelly's property. You're going to hear that this traffic is controlled. This is not haphazard criminal activity. This is organized criminal activity. And there's a hierarchy of organization involved in these trafficking enterprises. And you're going to hear that everything is controlled, including illegal migration, by these higher up drug trafficking organizations. You're going to hear that nothing goes through there. No drugs, no people, no nothing, no asylum seekers, no nothing, unless there's some sort of knowledge or approval from these organizations who control this territory. As such, you're going to hear that sometimes these organizations will retaliate against a guide, let's say, for various reasons. Perhaps this guide lost a load of drugs that he was supposed to deliver. Perhaps this guide stole a load of drugs that he was supposed to deliver. Perhaps this guide talked to the wrong person, gave information to the wrong person. Perhaps this guide smuggled a little bit extra without permission. Smuggling extra without permission is not allowed either. This is all happening in the area of Mr. Kelly's ranch. This ranch is isolated, it's secluded. There are Border Patrol cameras that are out there looking at the National Forest and looking at some of the properties out there. These cameras are not regularly pointed on Mr. Kelly's property. And the smugglers who use this area, they know how to avoid the cameras, they know how to go under the radar. Smugglers in that area are largely successful at what they do. Smugglers in that area are not keen to have a lot of extra police presence in that area. They've got a good operation going through there. They don't want people coming in there and messing that up for them. Mr. Kelly's property is a good corridor because it's right there north of where the wall ends, which is where people are coming through. And it's also right on the way to a road called Duquesne Road, which goes east to west out there. And that's a good pickup location. People who move drugs and people drop things off into a vehicle, vehicle takes them somewhere else. Duquesne Road is known for a lot of that sort of traffic. That's the knowledge that Border Patrol brings to the table about this area and about what's going on out there. Mr. Kelly and Wanda bring knowledge about this area as well, based on what they've seen and based on what they've done over the years. We mentioned too that Mr. Kelly and Wanda both feel less safe over over time as they're on this property, as they're receiving this information, and as they're looking at more evidence. And on those campsites that I mentioned where they're finding water bottles, they're finding clothing, they're finding things like that, they're noticing differences in clothing too. They're noticing that there's a lot more camouflage that they're seeing now that they didn't used to see. They're noticing that these water bottles that people are carrying are painted black. So a plastic water bottle that's painted black to avoid reflecting off of anything, to further avoid detection. And they find carpet shoes all over their property on a pretty regular basis. And carpet shoes are, it's a cutout piece of carpet that you put on the bottom of your shoe, and then there's camouflage and Velcro that's sewn into the carpet to attach the carpet to your shoe. And they learned that these are tools that are also used by smugglers to try to avoid being tracked, because Border Patrol tracks people, and carpet shoes, hopefully for the smugglers, tend to avoid that. Carpet shoes are typically discarded when a person gets picked up, because they don't want to be found with carpet shoes later, because that looks pretty suspicious. And so you'll find groups of carpet shoes just dropped in various locations on Mr. Kelly's property at various times. And when Mr. Kelly runs into this, he knows there was a group out here of somebody doing something, and they got picked up from here. Sometimes that's on his property, sometimes it's on roads near his property. It's a common occurrence for Mr. Kelly and his wife out there to have to deal with that. Things get very serious one time when Mr. Kelly is no longer on the property. Mr. Kelly leaves because he and his wife have some property up in the White Mountains. It has to be prepared before they can stay in it. A lot of things have to be de-winterized and stuff like that. But they like to go to the White Mountains in the summer times. Mr. Kelly's away at the White Mountains once when he gets a call from Wanda. And she says that something happened. She doesn't know what, but something happened. There's helicopters everywhere. She doesn't know what's going on. Mr. Kelly and Wanda eventually hear that somebody found a dead body near Mr. Kelly's property. And this is the body of a woman who's been discovered, he believes, in a car. He hears this little secondhand, third-hand knowledge, so he's not sure exactly what happened out there, but he's very concerned. And one of the neighbors tells him that this woman was possibly murdered, and he stops what he's doing, he returns, and he goes back because he doesn't want Wanda to be by herself when all of this is going on. This is the environment that he finds himself in, and this is what he and Wanda are dealing with on a regular basis. They used to feel safe on their property. They don't feel safe on their property anymore. And there's a lot of scary things that are happening around them. They've called law enforcement before, and they know that it takes time to get out there. They have a good relationship with law enforcement. Mr. Kelly continues to report things that he sees, including various cuts in his fences, because back in the day, when you had family groups going through, they would go under the fences by the smooth wire. Not anymore. Now his fences get cut pretty regularly, and his cows will get out, and he has to walk his fences to make sure that he can repair them and things like that. So he's scared every day on his property, and he needs to arm himself every day on his property to try to deter this, to try to protect himself. It's in this context that Mr. Kelly sends text messages that the state put on your screens in front of you during their opening statement. You're going to hear about some of Mr. Kelly's text messages, and the state's going to tell you that this shows that Mr. Kelly is just amping himself up to go do something. He's really getting ready to hurt somebody. He really hates people who are crossing his property, etc. I just want to get out in front of that a little bit and give you folks the context so that when you read those messages, you can understand what Mr. Kelly is saying. In those messages, Mr. Kelly's talking to a friend of his who lives up in the White Mountains. And in those messages, Mr. Kelly is sharing his feelings with his friend. And when men get together to share their feelings, as far as I know, maybe doesn't mean anything, but when they get together to share their feelings, they don't typically say, hey man, I'm really scared on my property. There's a lot going on. I feel this is getting out of my control. I hope and pray that nothing will happen to me or my wife, but I'm really scared. Maybe some men do that, but a lot of them don't. A lot of them will say things like, hey man, I'm in a war zone over here. Give me some support, buddy. Or, hey, guess what happened the other day? I was out there. And they tell stories. They exaggerate. They go over the top to the point of even lying and making things up. They insult each other. They use self-deprecating humor. They talk about how they're too old to run away. I can't shoot straight, gotta shoot a lot of rounds, I'm too old. That's the sort of conversation that we're talking about. We're talking about private conversation between two guys that's crude, that's over-exaggerated, and that could certainly be offensive in some company. What's also never intended to be seen by anybody. This is intended to be private. This is intended to be just a couple of guys who know each other, who have known each other for a very long time, who are trying to blow off steam because of the impossible situation that Mr. Kelly finds himself in. The evidence is not going to show that these messages show that Mr. Kelly is a mean or a violent person, or that Mr. Kelly hates anybody. These messages do not take away from Mr. Kelly's compassionate heart. They do illustrate his fear, and they illustrate his increasing concern about what's happening. They illustrate his knowledge that he might be encountered with something dangerous. They illustrate his fear of being discovered unarmed on his property. And they illustrate his fear of possibly being confronted by armed people on his property, as he has been in the past. And then, on January 30th of 2023, Mr. Kelly is confronted with this threat. January 30th starts out a day like any other day on Mr. Kelly's ranch. He goes outside, he does his chores, he's got his animals, he's checking on them. And then he goes inside to eat lunch. It's a late lunch, it's around 2 o'clock, something like that. His wife, Wanda, is in the house and she's playing with the cat when this happens. And Mr. Kelly's making his sandwich, and he looks up, and he sees something out of the windows in front of him. From where he's standing, and the state showed you that picture where they showed here's where the body was, here's the view that he got. Mr. Kelly's not standing on his patio when he looks up. He's standing inside his house and looking out windows. That view that the state showed you in that picture, that's impossible to see from where Mr. Kelly's standing inside of his house. You go outside on the patio, it's extremely difficult to see. Inside in the house, absolutely impossible. There's no way Mr. Kelly saw anything out there at that distance from inside his house. But he does see something from inside his house. He sees at least 5 people carrying large backpacks and carrying rifles. And they're going across his property. Window on the left, window on the right. He sees them going from left to right. He says, Wanda, be quiet. Call Jeremy Morcell. Call the ranch liaison, because he sees these people. That's the person who responds. That's the fastest person who responds to help. Wanda gets her phone. She calls the number. Mr. Kelly feels threatened when he sees these people walking across his property like this with those weapons. Mr. Kelly gets the ranch liaison on the phone. He tells the ranch liaison about what he's seeing. And then he hears a shot. He hears a shot fired. A single shot. He thinks it's the sound of a rifle shot. This happens so fast, but this single shot that he hears changes everything in his mind. He knows that something is happening outside, something violent, something dangerous. That single shot might not be the last shot fired. That might be the first of many shots that he hears. All of this processes through his mind in less than a second. Just hearing that single shot, suddenly everything is different. Suddenly, this might go very badly. Wanda's with him. She didn't hear the shot. Wanda wears hearing aids, and those were fading. And she doesn't hear noises that are happening outside like that, even when they're working to the best of their abilities. But Mr. Kelly heard that shot, and he knew that he and his wife were in danger. Time in a moment like that is really suspended, and people start acting. There's not a lot of logical thought process. There's action. Some people freeze, some people act. And Mr. Kelly acted. He took action in order to protect himself and to protect his wife. Again, he tells Wanda, call Agent Morcell. Wanda calls Agent Morcell. Mr. Kelly quickly says, I might be being shot at. I might be returning fire. I'm returning fire. Goes out. Agent Morcell describes this conversation as very quick. He says Mr. Kelly is excited. He says Mr. Kelly is obviously encountering something, because he obviously is. He's inside his house. He cannot see the location where this body is discovered from there, but he's obviously encountering something. That means there's something happening out there that has nothing to do with the location of this body. There's something else happening. Agent Morcell has now been informed. Now Border Patrol and the Sheriff's Department are hopefully on their way. Mr. Kelly knows this. He knows law enforcement's coming, but he knows how slow their response time is, and he knows that the threat that he's encountering is a threat he's encountering right now. Wanda, stay inside. He tells Wanda to stay inside. Wanda is terrified. She stands in the living room in between the windows. She doesn't even want to look outside. She's frozen. She's scared. Mr. Kelly walks outside. He picks up his rifle while he goes outside. He sees his horse running at about 100, 150 yards away, beyond two fences. His horse is out there, running. His horse is Sonny. Sonny is spooked. Sonny doesn't like gunshots. Sonny heard that single shot too, and he's running. He picked up on the danger too. He's an old horse. He doesn't like to run, and he doesn't do it very often. But when he's scared, he runs. Mr. Kelly wanted to just go out onto the patio with his rifle to be visible so that people could see him and they would run away. They wouldn't encounter him. That was his plan. As he walks outside, the metal porch door that he goes out, it shuts with a bang. It's a loud bang. The person who's in front of the group who's leaving turns, sees Mr. Kelly, and points his rifle at Mr. Kelly. This is another one of those moments, like hearing that single shot. He sees a rifle. A rifle is pointed at him. Mr. Kelly is threatened. There are armed criminals on his property. He's already heard a shot. Maybe another shot is about to be fired, and maybe it's about to be fired at him. He believes that his life is in imminent danger. He knows that Wanda is in the house behind him. He knows her life is also in imminent danger, and he has to stop the threat. He has to stop it from happening. He makes a split-second decision. He doesn't shoot this person. He doesn't use lethal force, even though he had every right to do so. He doesn't. He raises his rifle at an angle high up so that he knows he's not going to hit anybody, and he fires. He fires until the threat is gone. He fires until these people are on their way out, and he knows that they're leaving. You heard the state talk about how Mr. Kelly's rifle had a 30-round magazine. It can be emptied in a matter of seconds. Mr. Kelly didn't empty his magazine, not even close. Mr. Kelly fired 8-9 shots, and then he stopped. He stopped because the threat stopped. The threat was gone, and he stopped. What he did to protect himself and to protect his wife was effective. These folks run away. Wanda, she's inside the house. She can hear these shots. These shots are coming from close by. She can hear them. She freezes. She can't even look out the window. She's so scared that her husband might be out there dead. She doesn't know what happened. She doesn't know how long she stands there, afraid to look out and see what happened. She doesn't want to see his body when she looks out the window. She gets the courage eventually to look out. She doesn't see Alan. She's relieved. She sees him walking on the road towards the barn. He tells her he's okay. He says he's going to go check on his barn, and he walks in that direction to make sure that his barn is secure. He walks on his road to make sure people are gone and to make sure he and his wife are truly safe. As he does that, he has another phone call with Agent Morcell. He tells Agent Morcell that he saw these folks, and Agent Morcell asks him if Mr. Kelly was being shot at or if they were armed. Mr. Kelly says something to the effect of, "It's too far away to tell if they are all armed." Something along those lines. Agent Morcell interprets that as Mr. Kelly saying, now he doesn't say anybody is armed. Now he's changed his statement. This misunderstanding between Mr. Kelly and Agent Morcell is later used against Mr. Kelly. Unfortunately, the phone calls that Mr. Kelly has with Agent Morcell are not recorded, and so we're never going to know the exact words that Mr. Kelly used in this case. And this is the first of a very unfortunate theme in this case. The theme of words being changed, of meanings being misunderstood, of statements being twisted. And we will see this again. Agent Morcell, eventually, he sent his agents out there, the sheriff's department. They're going out there to investigate this offense, to see what's happening. They get out there and they begin to search the area. The deputies who are searching the area are themselves carrying rifles because they're told the nature of the call. There may be armed people, there may be shots fired, so they're taking precautions. The deputies walk all over Mr. Kelly's property. They fan out in this area near where Mr. Kelly said he was shooting. They spread out and they walk through it. They walk through the pasture that's out there, the yard. They go beyond Mr. Kelly's 2 fences, all the way back into where the wash is. Multiple deputies are out there searching that area. They're looking for people who might be hiding, people who might be hurt. They're looking for people who might be under trees or under bushes. They're looking in washes. They're looking for people who might be on the ground. And they don't find anybody. They don't find anybody who's injured or hiding. They don't find anybody who's dead or dying. They don't find anybody at all. They don't find any sign of the men that Mr. Kelly described or anybody else. Everybody's gone. They find Mr. Kelly, and then they briefly talk with Mr. Kelly about what happened. Deputies, a number of them, talk to Mr. Kelly. They talk to Wanda. They don't record their interactions. They don't, record the conversations. So we don't know, again, exactly what is said. And here we see words that get changed. We see differences in different reports. It's very unclear what was actually said, and because nothing was recorded, we don't know what was actually said. Nobody at this point did a thorough interview with Mr. Kelly or his wife. This was brief. They were generally searching for people. They didn't find any people, and when they figured we didn't find any people, there's really not much for us to do here. We'll document the incident and we'll go home. So nobody ever sat down with either Mr. Kelly or Wanda and said, talk me through this. Let's take this one step at a time. Let's go through this slowly. While you talk, I'll ask you some clarifying questions if I have them. If I hear something that's I think is wrong, I'm going to tell you, and you can tell me if I misunderstand that. Nobody ever did that at this point with Mr. Kelly or his wife, and nobody ever recorded any other interactions with Mr. Kelly or his wife out there. Law enforcement leaves. Mr. Kelly and his wife are spooked and exhausted from this incident. They're shaken, but they figure that it's over, and they're grateful that they're both unharmed. They think that's the end of it. This has already been a very long and traumatic day for the Kellys, but unfortunately, their nightmare's just beginning at this point. Later that evening, they think this is all over. Everything's over and done with. Later that evening, Mr. Kelly goes outside to check on his horse. He always brings Sonny, the horse, into the closer pastures in the evening, and this is part of his routine. He's checking on Sonny again because Sonny was very spooked during this incident, and he wants to make sure again that his horse, Sonny, is okay. Mr. Kelly's dogs, he's got 2 dogs, they go out with him. They go everywhere with him. 2 dogs are always with Mr. Kelly when he's out on his property. He goes outside and he's getting his horse taken care of and squared away for the night, and then he notices that his dogs are looking at something. His dogs are circling around something in the grass, and this is about 115 yards away from his house. This is outside of 2 separate fences. If you go outside of the house onto the patio, there's a fence, there's a pasture, there's another fence. We're beyond the second fence, very far away from Mr. Kelly's house. He goes up to see what the dogs are looking at. And he approaches and he sees the body of Gabriel Cuen Buitimea. When he sees that body, he freezes. One of those moments again where time sort of stands still for Mr. Kelly. He thinks, oh my goodness, he's just discovered a body on his property. He sees his dogs sniffing and nudging the body. He notices the body seems to be stiff, and his background tells him this person might have rigor mortis of some kind. He's stiff. He notices the dogs and he sees the limbs are stiff. The sun's going down at this point. It's almost dark. He's looking at the body. He sees this is a man. He sees this man is wearing a camouflage backpack. It's not a big backpack like the group that he saw earlier. This isn't in the place where he saw the group earlier. And he notices there's a camouflage fanny pack also next to the body, hanging down, not really attached to anything. And he's remembering that single shot that he heard earlier in the day before he went outside. That single shot is coming back to him. He's in shock. He stands frozen. He's never found a body before. He's never seen a dead person before. He doesn't know what to do, but a million thoughts are racing through his mind. He knows he fired shots earlier. He knows the body's on his property. He knows that somebody might be thinking to blame this on him. He is scared out of his mind. He's remembering again that single shot that he heard. He also knows there might be people around him. He doesn't know if he's alone. He doesn't know who else is out there. Obviously, tons of people were on his property throughout the day, and he doesn't know if anybody else is out there. He is scared. In spite of this fear, he calls for help. In spite of knowing, oh my gosh, this might come back on me, he calls for help. He does the right thing. He calls the ranch liaison because that's who he calls. That's the call that he makes whenever he's seeing something go on his property. So he calls Jeremy Morcell, Agent Morcell. He has faith that this can be investigated, Law enforcement will handle this, and everything's going to be okay. That faith turns out to be very misplaced. When he calls Agent Morcell, and again, no phone call to Agent Morcell is actually recorded. Agent Morcell remembers these conversations a certain way. Mr. Kelly remembers these conversations a different way. We don't know what was actually said because we don't have a recording. But he calls Agent Morcell. He says something, this is very bad. Send the sheriff out here. Send help out here now. According to Agent Morcell, he's saying something may have been struck earlier. That's what Agent Morcell says that Mr. Kelly says. Mr. Kelly's in shock, he's scared, he sounds serious. Agent Morcell has never heard him like this before. He says he doesn't want to talk over the phone. He still doesn't know who might be listening or who might be out there. Agent Morcell calls another Border Patrol agent. He calls an Agent Layugan, and he relays that information to Agent Layugan. Agent Layugan calls the Sheriff's Department and says something that influences very seriously the way law enforcement responds to this call. Agent Layugan, whether on purpose or by accident, but in a very big way, changes Mr. Kelly's words. Mr. Kelly, according to Agent Morcell, who spoke with Mr. Kelly, said, something may have been struck. I need you to, something may have been struck earlier. Agent Layugan takes that, and he says to the dispatcher, the homeowner's reporting, I may have struck something. He said, I may have struck something. Not what Mr. Kelly said. Makes a big difference, though. Makes all the difference, possibly. This is the first, not the last, example of words being changed. This monumental statement goes to the dispatcher with the Sheriff's Department. This is the person who's responsible for telling the deputies who are going out there, responsible for telling them, here's what you're going to see, here's what you're going to encounter, this is the call that came in. So when she gets on the radio to tell the deputies to go out there, she's saying, you know, the homeowner says he may have shot someone. Now it's not may have struck someone, it's he may have shot someone. That's what the homeowner said. I may have shot someone. Not what Mr. Kelly said. That's what law enforcement hears when they're on their way to answer this call. And that affects the way the deputies approach this call when they get out there. The deputies are viewing this case one way and one way only. And this is their first step in the investigation. This big change influences and establishes the bias in the investigation against Mr. Kelly. The dispatch then calls Mr. Kelly to talk to him. You heard that call, and you're going to hear that call again. Mr. Kelly is nervous and in shock, but he answers the phone and he speaks to the lady who's doing the dispatch. Mr. Kelly cannot bring himself to tell her that there's a dead person on his property. He's scared, he's in shock. He's never found a dead body before. He can't say the words. There is a dead person here. I'm looking at a dead person. That's hard. It's very, very hard. They're not coming out. It's not working. So he tries to tell her a different way, and that call reflects that. He tells her he doesn't want to get in trouble. He doesn't want to get her in trouble. He says these things. He does. He says these things. And he says these things because in that moment of shock and fear and discovery, he's thinking, they might think I did this. They might think I did this. And he's right. And his fear is reasonable. So when he makes those comments in his shock and in his fear, and somebody who's not troubled by this wouldn't make those comments. Somebody who's not troubled by this would say, I found a dead body. He's troubled by this. He's scared. He doesn't know what to do. He's rattled beyond anything. Dispatch keeps asking him questions, and he communicates to dispatch that there is a body out there. He says it in so many ways without actually using the words, because he can't use the words. But you can tell from that phone call that he's struggling and he's trying to communicate this fact so that he can get some help. He says, there's the body of an animal, you know, as opposed to a vegetable or a mineral. You know what I'm saying. He's trying to get dispatch to acknowledge what he's saying. He's not trying to treat anybody like within an inhumane manner. He's trying to communicate the facts in the only way that he can to find the words to do so. Eventually, he references the dead woman, the woman that he and Mrs. Kelly had heard about on that trip when Mr. Kelly was in the White Mountains. He says, remember that situation. Come on, dispatcher, you're going to understand it now. Remember that situation. That's what we have here. You know, the body. Okay. Dispatch finally gets it, and he doesn't want to use this word either because he's still outside. He still doesn't know who might be around him or who might be listening. When dispatch sends out the deputies, she tells the deputies that Mr. Kelly was being evasive when he had this conversation with her. So that's another example of bias in this characterization of Mr. Kelly's words as being evasive. She could have used a different word. She could have said, he sounds scared. He sounds like he's in shock. He sounds like he's afraid to speak to me directly. He sounds hesitant to use certain words. She chose the word evasive, and she spread that characterization to the deputies who were responding to the scene. So now the deputies think, we're going to go talk to this guy who's being evasive and who says he admitted he might have shot someone. Not at all the way Mr. Kelly reported this, but that's what the deputies are thinking when they go out there. When the deputies arrive, Mr. Kelly takes them to where the body is. And you'll note it, he has a conversation with Deputy Lopez, who's the first one out there on the scene who talks to him. And once law enforcement is there, Mr. Kelly says, there's a person, there's a body, there's a person, he is over there. He uses that language now that he knows there's somebody else who's there on the scene. The deputies that get there can see that there's a single gunshot wound, a single shot going through the side of the body and coming out through the chest.
All right, sorry to interrupt
No worries.
you, but we do need to take an afternoon break. So we'll take the break now, take about a 15-minute break. I know some of you wanted to see the jury commissioner, Juan Pablo Guzman, maybe related to work and what you have to submit. So I'm seeing if he can come up now and talk to you during this break, and if not, we'll put them together with you first thing next week. All right, we'll take a 15-minute recess. We'll come back at about 3 o'clock. We'll continue with the opening statement.
All right, so we are going to we're going to kick back, take it easy for 15 minutes. Maybe get a little shut eye. Do you guys want to rest for a bit? Could play some soft music. No power nap. What do you think of the way she's telling this story? This is the way the prosecution told it. It's very different. Same set of facts, but very different meaning behind them. We have an allegation, I guess, that the reports what he said on all the calls that weren't recorded, that what he said was not how other people remember it, or how other people remember it wasn't what he said. So a little bit of disputing of the conversation with everybody that wasn't recorded. The things that were recorded, I have to say, there did sound like a little bit like a stretch. Didn't sound like a common response. It's good storytelling. I will tell you that the one thing she's done very good on this whole case is that she has maintained the timeline. She's following the timeline through. Okay, we're not jumping around back and forth. And remember, he was in his house. Remember those bullets? Remember the patio? And there was his kitchen. We're not jumping around trying to put all the pieces together in our head. So I think the story, the narrative, is easier to listen to here, but not necessarily as convincing as what the first That was what the opening had, even though it was a little bit hard to listen to. Our pace is much better than the prosecution. Did we hear the phone call yet? Not from the defense. We'll hear it in court for sure, but the defense has not presented any evidence. They haven't used any PowerPoint or anything. It's all been just discussion. Happy birthday, RA. Love this channel. I live here now. L Diamonds, thank you very much. Appreciate that. Congratulations on 2 months of support. It was the same day that he found the guy. It was just later in the day. He went out to check his horse again and bring his horse in closer and found the guy then. Both sides have presented their entire cases during the opening. So I guess how they do it in this part of Arizona, that's what we're getting. We are just on the first break for the defense, but think of the timeline, okay? Think of the timeline where we're at here. All we have left is interviews, 911 calls, and that. And there's a lot of that. There's several calls, there's several discussions, there's several, things, but timeline-wise, defense is nearly done. They did a lot of backstory. We found out that it was 20-some-odd years ago that they bought the ranch. They didn't tell us, but I think it's about 173 acres. We got the backstory about him being into fish and game, liking fishing, and living up in Montana for his work for a lot of years. And then his wife said it was too cold and wanted to come down. They moved all the way down south, right to the border. She really did not. She wanted to get as far from Montana as she possibly could. I guess she's not big into fishing, but... We will watch the saves court from earlier. That would be fun. We'll do that on the break because we've got just a few minutes. Let's see. Let's bring this over there. Camera 7. Okay, let's see. Hang on one second. No, the video's gone. They zoinked it out. They zoinked it. I didn't know it was a watch now or forever hold your peace, guys. I've saved it, but it... Look, this... I kid you not. Video unavailable. Now it's something else. It's a different video. That's Lawn Lumber's intro, which I've also saved. I like that. I think that's actually the bug. That's the bug one. Oh, no. I should have recorded it. I've got the equipment. I'm sorry. The video is gone. Why did it make me laugh? It was the judge getting spicy. We were going to do the U counter and everything.
And Alec Murdoch stole it.
Alec Murdoch stole it. Cartel stole it. Man, my kids are eating dinner right now. I can smell it, but they're not bringing it to me. The video that we were going to watch was a little court we stumbled across this morning where the judge sort of was getting sort of wound up, telling off an inmate who I think had broken parole, and he was about to send him back and, for good, revoke the parole. So he had broken parole, he'd been taken in, and he was appearing for his hearing on the revocation. And he was just going off on the guy, saying this is on you. This isn't me. You're looking at me saying what a jerk judge this is, but this is on you. So I've learned my lesson. Some videos disappear at the moment they're done. What's for dinner? I don't know. Mrs. R.A. was snacking on a little piece of breaded chicken. Did you guys, when the defense told the story about Mr. Kelly here, I guess he doesn't go by George, so we're going to call him Alan Kelly. When they told the story about Mr. Kelly, did you believe, or did it ring true what you heard about how he's treated people in the past, specifically the people he found on his property, even that he left water bottles out for them? He helped them along. He's like, hey, it's good, no worries, it's fine. Live and let live. Is that I have a hard time thinking that he went from that to this. That he went from that to seeing someone out there and grab the gun. that seems like there's a disconnect in the middle. And I realized she said that took place over years, but just helping people out and seeing people in the campsites on his property and everything. I can tell you most ranchers, they hate finding people on their property, especially ones that might leave some trash or leave a fire burning or might cut the fence or might, scare the cows, or that part just felt like, I know there are people that do that, so I'm not putting that past people. There's some people who have very strong feelings about helping people who are crossing and in a terrible situation. A lot of the people who actually are trying to enter the country, whether it's, in this case it would be illegal because that's the only reason you go through an unfenced area instead of through immigration, but those people themselves are victims. In many ways, they've been victims of the cartel. They've been extorted in some ways. They might be threatened. They might be threatened to carry items for the cartel. They're scared. It's dangerous. And there are people that do help and do try to just extend a little bit of human decency to these individuals. But I don't get the feel that this rancher, as he's up fencing his property, okay, which I realize, he's running cattle. That makes sense. Fence the property, keep them in. But I don't get the feel that the rancher was the one doing that. I don't know. No one wants their home invaded. Yeah, we haven't heard anything really about him being threatened, about his home being invaded. We haven't heard about his stuff being stolen. What we get is basically he's right at the border. The people that come across, this is when they have all their supplies. That they aren't, miles into the desert, running low on water, out of food, missing a shoe. This is like step one into the United States across the fence, and they don't sound. It doesn't sound like at this point that they are really desperate for anything. They're not using his property or his supplies or his belongings as like a waypoint to stock up for whatever the rest of the trip is. Thank you, Just a Girl Baking. Appreciate the kind words. It's gonna be a great birthday. Break time streak. Whoa! Look at my briefs. We've had a streaker now, first time ever. The part that didn't ring true to me. I think the defense lawyer said that when he saw the first group in the afternoon and he felt like he got shot at and he shot in the air. He raised his gun up and shot in the air. It's not smart to shoot in the air because those bullets can travel miles, literally miles, and you don't know where they're coming down. But at the same time, they go up a lot faster than they come down. Gravity doesn't accelerate them to the speed that they leave the gun. But still, they're dangerous and can be deadly. So, the part that doesn't ring true is if he shot up in the air and somebody got hit right there at chest level, we know it's only 115 yards from his house. And that gun with the, assuming it's a 7.62, which is a common AK-47 round, a couple inches of drop at 100 yards. That's all you're going to get. So aiming up in the air, you would have missed everything. You would have been miles away, miles and miles away, not 115 feet away. And it definitely wouldn't have gone up in the air a mile and a half, 2 miles, 2.5 miles, and then come back down and then hit the guy unless he was laying on the ground. And it is irresponsible to shoot in the air. Let's see. Does the bullet in the victim match this firearm? This one I don't know, Lenova. We don't know yet. We're going to hear some of this, that the casings on the ground match his firearm, which makes sense. They're on his back porch. and he's a rancher. A lot of ranchers will use these guns to shoot at the animal, the coyote, especially if he's a cattle rancher, because the coyotes will just tear apart baby calves. So that makes sense to have rounds from his gun around his property. Perfectly legal to go out in his backyard and shoot. This is wide open space. This is not downtown New York or New Jersey or anywhere else where you can't do that. Even here, I can go like a block and a half from my house, and there's ranch or farmland where people can go out and shoot just right there, and they can go hunt. They can hunt deer. It's big enough property and space they can do that. He's in the middle of nowhere, and that's something that was okay. But so finding the casings on the ground themselves don't mean that he committed this, although the ejection pattern, which is going to be just like they were spread out in this area, it would have made sense that could have happened with the gun pointed this direction. I don't know. I don't buy that very well, because you could probably get that from two directions. He refused to say human being. That struggles. I struggle with that one. I don't get that he's never been around anyone who's passed away. He's 73 years old. I realize it could be a traumatic incident, but he's around hunting. He's around. I mean, he's guided people on hunting. He knows what death looks like, especially in animals. It can be traumatic with animals. And how is it suddenly so different when he sees a person who has passed away previously, that now he can't find the words to express it? That part was a tough sell. All right, I'll try again. Shooting in the air is not a good idea. I agree. Crazy Cat Queen, in Arizona, they don't have what officially is a stand your ground law, but they don't have any requirements to back away from danger. So there's no requirement that says he should have first called 911, or he should have done other methods first. He could have hidden. He could have just stayed quiet. They would have gone by. There's no requirement there, so that can't be held against him in Arizona under the law for taking action on his property. He's allowed to do that he doesn't have to fire a warning shot if he's threatened. None of that's a requirement. But when it comes to trespassing, you're not allowed to shoot trespassers on sight. So there has to be some level of threat. And in this case, you're going to have a rational, reasonable person that will be able to say, yes, in that situation, I can see that there would have been a threat there, or that he could perceive it as a threat for him to be able to be acquitted on this. And that may or may not be difficult to reach with the jury. I get to hear coyotes howling at night. It's so awesome. I don't regret leaving California. Coyotes are fun. Have you heard of wolf? Oh, man. I've seen a lot of coyotes. I've seen one wolf in the wild. One wolf, and it was a lone wolf. But, oh my goodness, what an amazing, amazing creature. Laws have changed in Arizona since then. D-Nick, in what way? As far as shooting trespassers? I think we've got Court back here. Awesome. I'll watch for it. I didn't see the gesture the prosecutor or the defense made, but she says he raised his gun in the air and fired. And I'm not sure if she said raised or raised. Easy there, my ears. Buckle up, guys. We're about to get yelled at to be quiet, and all rise for the jury, and then the judge comes in after that.
You'll be able to find out.
Oh, yeah. I'll be here. Yeah.
So your sister does this too?
So then, yeah, she would come and
They have both. They have both varieties.
And so if I can't do it,
I think the term coyotes, when it refers to the smugglers,
she'll come in. You're the one that has me come in, right?
Yeah.
She'll come in and some in. So
when it comes to the smugglers, they also prey on the weak. I think they did find the slug. We're going to hear about some damage. It sounds like it did strike something before it struck him. Princess Luki, from what we've heard, we'll hear more from the medical examiner. It went through his side and out his chest. There we go. I think this is the jury coming in. And we'll hear in a minute the judge. Two charges on this one: second-degree murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. The AA charge, aggravated assault, is not in relation to the victim who passed away, but in relation to his friend that was with him, that was also technically shot at as they were together. Here's the judge.
Thank you. Everyone, please be seated. Back on the record. The record will show the presence of all the jurors, counsel, and the defendant. Ms. Larkin, whenever you're ready, you can continue with your opening statement.
Thank you. You still hear me? You still work? Okay. And I want to get into the description of what the deputies find when they come and they examine this scene. I want to circle back a little bit because I neglected to mention a couple of things, very basic. But when Mr. Kelly went out onto his patio and when he fired the shots in the upward direction and he sees the individuals with the backpacks run off, he also notices something else. He notices movement coming from a different direction further away. He doesn't see people at that time, but he notices movement, and he thinks that perhaps there are other individuals out there. When the deputies arrive the first time on scene, he mentions to those deputies that there might have been two groups out there, and that's something that he tells them from the very beginning, so I wanted to make sure I didn't forget to mention that. So when the deputies do arrive to examine the scene and to examine the body, and they find that this man is down there on the ground, on his stomach, with that single gunshot wound going through his side and coming out his chest. The body turns out to be later identified as somebody named Gabriel Cuen Buitimea. He's face down, he's wearing a camouflage backpack. That backpack is pulled over his head, so the backpack's not on his back where it normally would be. It's up over his head more. And it appears to be unzipped. There are certain zippers that are undone on this backpack. The fanny pack that Gabriel was carrying is really not attached to him in a normal way. It might be dangling from the backpack or lying at his side, but it's very unusual because the fanny pack appears to be next to him rather than on him. Gabriel's wearing tan pants and he's wearing a camouflage shirt with a jacket over the top. Gabriel has a radio on his hip, one of those two-way radios. The deputies don't find any drugs, they don't find any guns on Gabriel. They do find that radio. They also find a cell phone inside Gabriel's jacket. So he had a radio with him, and he had a cell phone with him. Mr. Kelly, while the deputies are out examining the crime scene, he makes some statements to the deputies while they're looking at the body. He expresses that he's puzzled because the deputies didn't find the body earlier when they had searched through this area where it was eventually located. And he says, maybe this happened after you left, trying to explain how it could be that there were deputies searching this area when he originally called and they didn't find this person there. He says he doesn't know what happened. Mr. Kelly then is moved away from the body and he's told he has to stand outside with one of the deputies who's there. He asks for water and the deputy tells him, no, you can't go inside to get water. He's told he can't go back into his house and that he has to stay where he is. And then Wanda, who was inside the house and doesn't really know what's going on, they take her outside of the house and they tell her to sit in the back of a patrol car. And she sits in the back of the patrol car and those doors are locked. She can't get out of the patrol car. She doesn't know what's going on. Nobody tells her what's going on. She's confused, she's scared. She doesn't know why she's sitting in the back of a patrol car all of a sudden. She doesn't understand why she's been separated from her husband on the scene, and she doesn't know what's going on with him. She does see Mr. Kelly being walked past the car that she's in, and he's in handcuffs now. She sees that, her husband in handcuffs, walking past the car where she's sitting. And now she's very scared. She doesn't know what's going on. Now he's being taken to the police station to go be questioned. They're both scared. Neither one of them know what's going on. They just know this is bad and this is not what we thought was going to happen. We didn't see our day ending like this at all. Mr. Kelly does an interview at the Sheriff's Department, their investigation unit, and he is interviewed by Detective Einsa and Detective Barba. They're both sitting in on the interview. He agrees to talk to them because he wants this case to be solved. He wants to find out what's happening. He wants to tell them what he knows. And he agrees to talk to them. And he hopes that if he talks to them, they'll understand what he's saying and they will help him try to find out what the truth is, to try to find out what happened to Gabriel. The evidence is going to show that this interview is very, very hostile. It's clear that the detectives in this are not interested in anything other than obtaining evidence of Mr. Kelly's guilt. They're not interested in being open-minded to listen to what he's saying. And once again, we find examples of law enforcement changing Mr. Kelly's words when he doesn't say what they want him to say, when he doesn't say the thing that makes him guilty. Mr. Kelly, during this interview, continuously denies shooting anybody. He's asked repeatedly, and he repeatedly denies it. He denies that he shot at anybody. He says, I never shot at anybody. I never shot in the direction of people. The detective in this interview directly accuses Mr. Kelly of shooting this person, and Mr. Kelly continues to deny it. Mr. Kelly tells the detectives that he fired up into the air, and he brings his arms up to try to demonstrate the direction that he was firing. The detectives don't bother to put a map, let's say, of his property in front of him. They don't bother to ask him to point out where specifically were you standing when you fired these shots. They don't bother to ask him what direction he was firing in. They don't walk him through the scene, and a lot of investigations do that. When there's a shooting and the shooter is a cooperative person, the investigators take them to the scene and they say, show me where you were standing. Show me where you saw the people. Show me where you were aiming. Show me this, show me that. That's a common thing that investigators do for shooting incidents. They didn't do that in this case. They didn't even give him a picture of the scene. They didn't have him draw anything. They didn't allow him to do anything to truly show them where he was, where these people were, and which direction he was firing in. They didn't bother. In this interview, they tell Mr. Kelly that they're going to do ballistics. And they tell him, listen, we're going to do ballistics. If those ballistics show that that bullet came from your gun, then you're going to be in really big trouble. They continue to pressure him to tell the truth. They tell him to help yourself out. In spite of all of this browbeating that he's getting by these detectives, he doesn't waver. He continues to tell them what happened. At one point in this interview, the detective tells Mr. Kelly that his statements don't add up. He says, they're inconsistent. You're making inconsistent statements. Mr. Kelly asks the detective, he says, what do you mean? In what way are my statements inconsistent? What do you mean? And the detective doesn't tell him. He just says, well, what we've heard on scene, what you're saying here, it doesn't match, doesn't add up, doesn't give him any opportunity to explain or to clarify or to otherwise try to bring some understanding where there might be a misunderstanding. The detective doesn't give specific examples to Mr. Kelly. Well, here's what was said here, and this is inconsistent with what you're saying now. Doesn't do that. They've already decided that he's guilty. And then the detectives do something even worse than that. They go beyond browbeating. They go beyond not listening. They change Mr. Kelly's words. We've talked about this before. They changed his words before. They changed his words again. This time, it's written down. This time, it is recorded. And this time, there is no denying that what these law enforcement officials did was change Mr. Kelly's words. The detective writes down on a booking form, which is a form you fill out when you're arresting someone, and you write down, here's the probable cause we have for arresting this person. On that form, the detective writes down that Mr. Kelly admitted in this interview that he shot at multiple subjects. That was written, it was written on the booking form. Mr. Kelly admitted that he shot at multiple subjects. This isn't true. Mr. Kelly did not ever say that in the interview. And this is recorded and this is transcribed. The detective will acknowledge that that's what he did. He changed Mr. Kelly's words. He wrote down, essentially, that Mr. Kelly confessed to this offense when Mr. Kelly did no such thing. He changed Mr. Kelly's words so that what the detectives say Mr. Kelly said is the opposite of what Mr. Kelly said. In the interview, Mr. Kelly said, I never shot at anybody. And on the booking form, the detective wrote down, Mr. Kelly was interviewed and admitted to shooting at multiple subjects. The evidence will show that the detectives changed Mr. Kelly's words. During this interview, the evidence will also show Mr. Kelly offers to tell the detective where his rifle is. Mr. Kelly wants them to do ballistics. Mr. Kelly hopes that they find a bullet. Mr. Kelly knows that he did not shoot this person, and so he wants to help them out. So he says to the detective, I'll tell you where the rifle is. The detective says, no, we'll just get a search warrant. At this point, Mr. Kelly's been so browbeat, he just goes, okay, fine, fine. The detective's not interested in Mr. Kelly's help. And later, the evidence will show that that gets turned into this argument about Mr. Kelly trying to hide his weapon from investigators, when in fact, the opposite happened. He told the investigators, "I will tell you where this weapon is." They said no, they weren't interested in his help. Then there are some attempts to justify this behavior. The same detective, the one who filled out the booking form and put the wrong words in the booking form, at first, and earlier in this case, there was a preliminary hearing where that detective testified, and he was asked about that. At first, he said he did not fill out the booking form. And he said, "Nope, I have nothing to do with the booking. I didn't fill out that form." That was not true. That's what that detective said under oath. Later, at another hearing in this case, the detective eventually admitted, "Yes, I did fill out that booking form." So the detective came around and changed what he was saying. He made inconsistent statements, that detective, and those were made under oath. At another hearing, that same detective was asked about his reasons for arresting Mr. Kelly. And he justified Mr. Kelly's arrest by saying he made inconsistent statements. When actually, when the detective was challenged to provide what were those statements that Mr. Kelly made that were so inconsistent, the detective couldn't provide those, and so the detective just made something up. This is at a hearing, under oath. The detective testified under oath that Mr. Kelly, in his interview, the initial interview he had with the detective, first denied having shot his rifle at all, and then later Mr. Kelly admitted to firing his rifle. That was brought forward by the detective as one of Mr. Kelly's inconsistent statements to justify arresting him. Once again, not true. Mr. Kelly never ever denied firing his rifle. The detective was having a hard time with these questions, and so he just made up an inconsistency that didn't exist. The investigators in this case have obviously decided that if evidence against Mr. Kelly doesn't exist, or if they can't think of it in the moment, it is okay to just make it up. The evidence is going to show that this entire investigation is just as biased as that interview with Mr. Kelly. Law enforcement officials are putting words into his mouth that he never said. They accuse and confront him in his interview, and they act later to confirm their own bias rather than finding the truth. The evidence will show that law enforcement does not investigate any other possible explanation for Gabriel's death. They don't get a bullet, they can't recover a bullet, so they can't match this wound to any gun or anything. They don't initially order much forensic investigation. They don't wait. They don't take the time to really do the investigation that they should. They just arrest Mr. Kelly. They could have waited. You know, there's no law that says these detectives have to make an arrest the moment they suspect someone. They didn't have to do that. They could have done a thorough investigation first. They could have tested some other possibilities, some other explanations first. They didn't do that. They eventually find out there's no bullet, so they can't prove that this shot was fired from this weapon. And now there's no way for them to even prove which kind of weapon caused the wound that killed Gabriel. So now the investigation is in a difficult place. It's a weaker case. This investigation desperately needs witnesses now. And sure enough, they come out of the woodwork. There are a number of different people who've come forward in this investigation and claimed that they were witnesses to this event. The state's here in this trial, and you're going to hear from one person. You're going to hear from Daniel, who says he was with Gabriel. Daniel says he's the only person who was with Gabriel when this happened, the only person who saw what happened. Well, it's odd then, because there are other people who've come forward and said, no, I was there. No, I was there. more than one. And those folks are making false reports about Mr. Kelly. They did so pretty quickly, as it turns out. Law enforcement didn't express any kind of concern at all that there are multiple people coming forward claiming to have been witnesses to this event. And law enforcement doesn't express any concern when those people make statements and claims that are in fact verifiably false. For example, first person who comes forward is a phone call that the sheriff's department gets the day after this incident takes place. Somebody calling up claiming to be called Miguel, and he claims that he's related to Gabriel. He says, "That's my uncle. I know Gabriel, he's my uncle. And I was there, and I saw my uncle get shot." That's what he says. He never comes forward after that. This phone call, there's voices in the background of other people who are talking to him while he's talking to law enforcement. And law enforcement doesn't follow up on this for months and months. And that's sort of a casual, they meet with some of Gabriel's family members and they say, "Hey, doesn't he have a nephew named Miguel?" Family members, "No, he doesn't. There is no nephew Miguel. Who's that?" So somebody claiming to be related to this person calls law enforcement and they make claims and statements about this case, and those are verifiably false. Does this concern law enforcement? No. Does law enforcement think maybe this Miguel person is a potential suspect? No. Does law enforcement do anything to follow up to find out what's happening here? No. They don't care. They've got their guy. They're not interested in other possibilities. Shortly after that, that's Miguel. Shortly after Miguel, you have Ramon. Ramon shows up. Ramon is picked up in, I believe, Sonoita for alien smuggling. He's trafficking people through somewhere and Border Patrol picks him up. And after he gets arrested, he says, "Hey, I was there. I was there." They take a statement from Ramon. They talk to him. Ramon says some things that are concerning. He says he recognizes Mr. Kelly from the news. He says, "I saw this on the news, and I recognize him because I saw him on the news. I was there." He makes some more statements that contradict objective physical evidence in the case. Many such statements that contradict objective physical evidence in the case. Many such statements that are verifiably false based on what law enforcement knows about the scene and about what took place. Does law enforcement pursue that? Do they challenge Ramon? Do they consider Ramon to be a possible suspect? Do they ask questions about why now not one person but two people have come forward to say, "Mr. Kelly did it, he's the bad guy," and those statements don't match up with anything and they seem to be false statements? Is that a concern for law enforcement? No, they have their guy. They don't need to worry about investigating other things. So we get Miguel, we get Ramon, then we get Daniel. Daniel comes forward in a very controlled manner. This is controlled by Gabriel's family and controlled by a supposed family member who goes by the name of Juan Carlos Rodriguez. That person somehow communicates with the sheriff's department, and that person says, "Okay, we found someone. We have someone who was with Gabriel when he died. It's this guy, it's Daniel." Okay. So the family arranges for Daniel to come talk to law enforcement about what happened. And then we have another strange thing occur in this case. The Sheriff Hathaway himself personally decides to get involved in this case. And Sheriff Hathaway himself, personally, as part of this investigation, goes into Mexico to conduct this criminal investigation. And he goes in there, the evidence is going to show twice. First time to just meet with the family members, but he goes into Mexico to do that and doesn't document that meeting until much, much later, after he's told, you didn't document this, you got to document this. And then he goes with another detective. So Sheriff Hathaway goes himself personally with a detective, Barba. They travel into Mexico to have this criminal investigation, to conduct this criminal investigation. The evidence is going to show that there's no legal authority for the sheriff to do that. The evidence is going to show that Sheriff Hathaway did not go through any diplomatic channels in order to conduct an investigation in Mexico. He didn't liaise with any Mexican official, didn't do anything. He just went into Mexico to meet with the witness at a hotel across the line. He went with Detective Barba, as I mentioned. Gabriel has 2 adult daughters who were present at the meeting. This Juan Carlos Rodriguez person was there. They're all in this interview with Daniel. That interview takes about 45 minutes. They talk to Daniel. They don't record that interview. After the interview is finished, Sheriff Hathaway records a summary of the interview. So he gets the witness to essentially say again, tell us again what you just told this detective, but now we're going to record you. That recording lasts 6 minutes. So that's the documentation that they did of the interview that took place in Mexico with Daniel. After that interview, Daniel provides numerous other interviews, and Daniel testifies in a preliminary hearing in this case. Over the course of these numerous interviews, it becomes clear that DRR, Daniel, I'm used to using his initials, Daniel, he continuously changes and adjusts his story. And it's also very apparent that Daniel is handled by whoever's interviewing him very differently from how Mr. Kelly was handled. If Daniel says something that's verifiably false, for example, he gets an opportunity to explain it. He gets an opportunity to clarify. And inevitably, if he is caught in an outright lie, which does happen, he'll claim that he just misunderstood the question. That's what he does. The evidence will show that he makes many claims that are in fact verifiably false and that his claims are never challenged. He's always given the benefit of the doubt. Daniel's claims are contradicted by numerous other pieces of evidence in this case that I want you to watch out for while you're hearing this evidence. He's contradicted by other witness statements. So Miguel and Ramon tend to contradict him, as well as Mr. and Mrs. Kelly. He contradicts his own claims by changing what he says over time. And his claims are contradicted by the physical evidence in the case. I'm not going to go into every single inconsistency that Daniel has now. While you're listening to him testify, I want you to ask yourself, how does what he says actually match up with the physical evidence in this case? And the evidence is going to show that his statements do not match up. The evidence is going to show that it's in fact impossible to believe that Daniel was present when Gabriel was shot. For example, right off the bat, Daniel says all of this happened west of Nogales. Mr. Kelly's property is east of Nogales. Daniel's asked numerous times, where did this happen? East or west of Nogales? West. Not possible. Daniel states that after he was shot, Gabriel fell over backwards and landed on his side or on his back after he was shot. Also, not possible. Bodies found on the stomach, So if DRR is telling the truth and he fell over backwards, then after Gabriel was shot, his body was turned over. And that changes everything too. It's not possible to believe what Daniel says. Daniel also says that right after the shooting took place, Mr. Kelly stood over Gabriel's body. That Daniel saw that. He looked back, he was close, he saw him. He saw Mr. Kelly standing right there over Gabriel's body. The evidence is going to show that that is not possible. Not only is this 115 yards away from where Mr. Kelly was when he was firing, in order for Mr. Kelly to stand over Gabriel's body, he has to climb over 2 barbed wire fences and cover that distance in a very short time at his age. That's not possible. The evidence is going to show that. The evidence is going to show that Mr. Kelly is actually seen on camera by Border Patrol in a very different area after this shooting happens. Nowhere near where Gabriel is found. Daniel also says that this shooting happened right next to the border wall. He says we were 15 meters away from the border wall. It was right there when this shooting happened. Not possible. This took place over a mile and a half as the crow flies away from the border wall. Daniel also says that a horse was shot and killed in this incident. Not just shot, shot and killed. And he stuck with that. Shot and killed, and the horse fell down, and I saw the horse fall down. Not possible. Daniel also says that Gabriel was not wearing a two-way radio. He says, I was there, I was with Gabriel. He was just a migrant looking for the American dream. He was not wearing a radio. Not possible. Gabriel was wearing a radio. Daniel will also say that he and Gabriel, right before the shooting happened, they were right next to a road. And he got specific. He said it's the road that Border Patrol uses to get to the end of the wall. It's the road that goes to the end of the wall. Not possible. There is a road that Border Patrol uses. There is a road that goes to the end of the wall. It's not on Mr. Kelly's property. It's further away. So not possible. There are many, many of these examples, but we'll wait to see what Daniel actually has to say. The biggest 3 examples of these impossible statements are that the horse was shot and killed, that Mr. Kelly stood over Gabriel's body, and that this happened right next to the border wall. Those are huge. Those are not explainable by any conclusion other than Daniel was not there. Daniel did not witness this at all. There are other instances of Daniel misrepresenting things to law enforcement or changing his story as time goes on. At first, when he meets up with Sheriff Hathaway and Detective Barba, he says that Gabriel was the smuggler. Gabriel was leading the group. Later, he changed his story. No, Gabriel wasn't the smuggler. He just wanted the American dream. It was this other guy. I don't know his name. El Cholo. It was El Cholo. He was leading the group. That's what Daniel says. During an investigation where Daniel is talking to the detectives at the county attorney's office, they ask Daniel, have you ever transported drugs into the United States? Important question. You see what this guy's background is. Have you ever transported drugs into the United States? Daniel says, no, never. I've never done that. Well, turns out he has. That was not true. He lied about that in this investigation. The defense's investigation revealed that Daniel had been convicted in federal court of transporting marijuana into the United States. He took a plea in federal court under oath where he admitted that he transported drugs into the United States. And he did some time in federal prison as a result of that offense. When he was confronted with this information later, I just misunderstood the question. I thought when you asked me, have I ever transported drugs into the United States, I thought what you meant was, did I have any drugs with me when I was with Gabriel? Does that go challenged? No. No, that explanation's perfectly accepted by law enforcement. Daniel also stated under oath that he had not met with anybody to talk about this case until he was testifying about it. That was not true. When he made that statement, he had already had 2 separate meetings with law enforcement to talk about the case. And whenever he's questioned about any of these statements, he just says, I misunderstood the question. I didn't get it. I didn't understand what you were saying. And law enforcement just accepts those explanations. Nobody from law enforcement ever doubted or questioned Daniel's story. Daniel's statements in this investigation were always accepted as fact, and they were never subjected to any kind of meaningful scrutiny. In fact, maybe you won't be surprised by this, but law enforcement changed Daniel's statements. They changed his words to make those words fit into their story. Daniel did an interview with a detective at the county attorney's office, and the detective was translating what Daniel said to the prosecutor. He was asked in Spanish, where did this happen, east or west of Nogales? He said west. The detective who was questioning him in Spanish said, oeste, west? Daniel said yes. The detective translated that, east. He said east. That's a problem. This keeps happening in this investigation, and that is a problem. Never, in spite of all of this coming out, does law enforcement ever seem to question if they have the right guy. They never seem to question what is going on with this witness. I'm going to leave Daniel for a minute here, but again, I want to come back to the big 3. The 3 things he said that are impossible to believe. A horse was shot and killed when this happened. Impossible to believe. Mr. Kelly was standing over Gabriel's body right after this happened. Impossible to believe. And this happened right next to the border wall, 15 meters away. Impossible to believe. So keep that in mind when you're listening to this testimony, when you're evaluating this testimony. I want to talk very briefly just about the forensics that you will hear in this case. Because eventually law enforcement gets around to doing some forensic analysis of the scene. And the evidence is going to show there are some shell casings on the patio outside of Mr. Kelly's house. And the forensic evidence is going to show that there's a lot that we just can't know, we just can't prove forensically. Biggest thing is there's no bullet. And when there's no bullet, there's no proof. We can't prove that Mr. Kelly's rifle fired the shot that hit Gabriel. We can't prove it. We can't prove that his rifle did not fire the shot either. You can't prove it either way. There's nothing to hang your hat on forensically to say for sure, here's what happened or didn't happen in this case. The forensics can't prove or find out who fired the single shot, the shot that Mr. Kelly heard. Who fired that single shot that killed Gabriel? We don't know. Which direction did that shot come from? We don't know. You heard the state say that because bullet comes in here and it comes out here and he's lying on his stomach, well, it comes from the direction of the house. That's where it came from. We don't know that. We don't know how Gabriel was standing when he got hit. We don't know if he was standing when he got hit. We don't know if he took steps before he fell. We don't know if he perhaps fell over backwards, the way Daniel described it, and then was either rolled over or rolled over. We don't know any of that. There's no forensic evidence that can tell us This is how Gabriel was standing before he got shot. Or even this is where he was before he got shot. We don't have that evidence. And who is Gabriel and what was Gabriel doing there? Again, there's a lot that's unknown about Gabriel, about who he is and what he was doing there. All we have is the evidence, and we look at that evidence. The witness, Daniel, says Gabriel's looking for the American dream. He's a migrant, he wants to work, and he's just traveling unarmed, doing nothing, and suddenly Mr. Kelly starts firing at him. The physical evidence tells another story. The physical evidence shows that he's carrying a radio. You're going to hear about radios. He's carrying a radio. He's carrying camouflage. His backpack and his fanny pack are camouflage. The phone, Gabriel had a phone. They examined the phone. There are some photographs of Gabriel's activity on that phone. And you're going to see photographs of Gabriel on dates that are different from January 30th. You're going to see photographs of Gabriel from prior occasions on prior dates. In those photographs, you're going to see Gabriel wearing the same clothing. Same clothing he's wearing when he dies, he's wearing on other occasions, different occasions. You're going to see him carrying a fanny pack. You're going to see him carrying it in front of him, going across his body like that. Not down at his side, not dangling off of his backpack. He carries it across his body. Photographs will show that. The photographs are going to show Gabriel standing up high on a mountaintop somewhere. Fanny pack across his chest. Radio. He's got his radio again on that date. Binoculars. He's carrying binoculars this time too. What's he doing? I think we can make an inference about that. So, who is Gabriel and what's he doing on Mr. Kelly's property? Pictures are worth 1,000 words. And the pictures show that Gabriel is not somebody who's looking for the American dream. This is somebody who is engaged in trafficking. He's engaged in illegal activity. And I'm not talking about just coming across as an illegal alien. I'm talking about either scouting or smuggling, trafficking people, trafficking drugs. We don't know, but he's trafficking. He's involved in that world. And at the end of the day, the evidence is going to show that Gabriel is living a criminal lifestyle, and criminal lifestyles are dangerous. The evidence will show that there's one shot fired before Mr. Kelly leaves his house, and Gabriel died as a result of one shot. One shot, one bullet hole. That's what the evidence is going to show. The person responsible for firing that single shot is also the person responsible for Gabriel's death that day. And that person is not Mr. Kelly. Law enforcement had a bias going into this investigation, and they wrapped the evidence around Mr. Kelly. They decided he was guilty, and they made it work. They didn't let the evidence lead them to their conclusions. They let their predetermined conclusions lead them to their interpretations of the evidence. And this is why at the end of this, we will be asking all of you to render a not guilty verdict in this case. We're asking that each one of you listen to each witness very carefully. You heard my co-counsel yesterday talk to you about they start with a clean slate, you take them as they are, you start with no preconceived notions, listen to what they say, compare what they say to the other evidence in the case. We're asking that you not make the same mistake law enforcement did. Don't start with the mindset that Mr. Kelly shot this person. Start with the mindset of wanting to seek the truth, of wanting to go where the evidence leads, not the other way around. And we're asking you especially to consider the physical evidence in this case. Everybody has statements. Statements need to be tested against the physical evidence. That's the most important thing, the facts. Very particularly, we want you to understand the distance from Mr. Kelly's patio to where this body was eventually located. Pay close attention to all the photographs that you see, the drone footage that you see of this property, and pay close attention to the number of obstacles that are in between where Mr. Kelly was standing and where Gabriel was eventually discovered. You're going to see pergola legs, you're going to see smokers, you're going to see many, many trees, you're going to see wood piles, you're going to see fences, you're going to see dozens and dozens of obstacles in between where Mr. Kelly was standing and where Gabriel's body was eventually discovered. And you're not going to see in any of those obstacles, you're not going to see a bullet hole. You're not going to see any lead residue, any of those obstacles. The state is going to try to convince you that Mr. Kelly fired 9 shots through this field of obstacles with the intent of hitting Gabriel, who he can barely see from the patio and who he can't see from inside the house. The state is going to try to convince you that 9 shots went through this field of obstacles and left no bullet holes and no lead residue. There's a broken branch in this field of obstacles, a single broken branch. This is a pasture. This field of obstacles is in a pasture. Animals all over this place all the time. In that broken branch, again, there's no bullet hole, there's no lead residue, there's no evidence whatsoever that that branch was hit by a bullet. There's no evidence that any bullets went through this field of obstacles, let alone 9 of them. So keep the physical evidence in mind, keep the forensic evidence in mind when you're listening to witnesses tell their stories. Keep other witness statements in mind to compare with the witnesses that you're hearing, and keep the known facts of the case in mind to have in mind when you're listening to people testify. The facts that can't be disputed. Have those in mind when you're listening to the witnesses. The state in this case is going to ask you to speculate about motives and meanings. He sent this text message, here's what he meant. This is what he thought. This is what he felt. They're going to ask you to make subjective determinations about what certain phrases mean. They're going to ask you to make subjective determinations about what somebody feels or what somebody thinks. We're not going to ask you to do that. We're going to ask you to not speculate. We're going to ask you to rely on the facts of this case, the facts, the things that we know. And finally, before I wrap up, I just want all of you to remember, co-counsel talked about it yesterday, but remember who has the burden of proof. This table has the burden of proof. This table has to prove to you that Mr. Kelly shot Gabriel. We don't have to prove that he didn't. We don't have to prove that he's innocent. All right? It's their job to prove that he shot Gabriel. And they can't do it. And remember why the burden of proof is the way that it is. We're asking you at the end of this trial, after hearing all this evidence, to render a not guilty verdict. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Larkin. Can we get counsel on the headset for a second?
Headphones ready for the pink noise. We're going to turn it down. So quick. All right. Wow. Okay, I realize she talked for a long time. She talked for a long time, and we're glad she's done. They both talked for a long time. I guess they do that in Arizona. Maybe that's just how it happens. But wow. The allegations made by defense are huge, that their witnesses are literally uninformed and impeached. They're not saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, well, they did a little bit with the zip, the baggie, the fanny pack, the backpack, the unzipped things. They're basically insinuating that the victim in this case had something illegal, whether it was money going back to Mexico or drugs coming this way or something like that. They're insinuating that he was participating in something illegal, and whoever was with him at the time it happened took that. I do think if the cartel was if this was a hit by the cartel, they wouldn't leave their radio and the cell phone to point back to it. I think they'd be more thorough. But yeah, they're blaming the victim a little bit. He appears to fit some of the descriptions of the illegal activity that has happened in that area, and so that's very convenient for the defense. But with all these witnesses, the going to Mexico and getting a statement from somebody and then talking to them, interviewing them, and then say, now we're going to record your statement and say it again on the record. That sounds sketchy. It sounds really, really sketchy. I want to see the bullet travel path, because nine rounds through that, 9 rounds pointed at that with all those obstacles. Unless he's a really good shot, and an AK-47 typically is not a really good shot. The guns, the parts are loose. They're not tight fitting. I mean, there are some models that are better than others, but I don't know. I think the defense did a great job to make the jury doubt this testimony they're going to hear from who was it, Daniel? Man, this suddenly became very, very intriguing to me.
The jury, we're about to adjourn in a moment. I am going to do something that I neglected to do right after you were sworn, but it's brief. I'm going to read you the formal charge in this case. This is the charge on what's called an information. So the charge and the information is the formal statement of what the charges are against this particular defendant. The caption of the case, there's always a caption of the case, that has the name of the case, the State of Arizona Plaintiff versus George Allen Kelly, Defendant. It reads as follows. In the name and by the authority of the State of Arizona, George Allen Kelly, date of birth 1/27/1949, accused by the County Attorney of Santa Cruz County, State of Arizona, by this information filed with the clerk of the above titled court this 15th day of March 2024 of the crime committed as follows. Count 1, second-degree murder. George Allen Kelly, on or about January 30, 2023, did commit second-degree murder by causing the death of GCB without premeditation. Count 2, aggravated assault. It alleges George Allen Kelly, on or about January 30th, 2023, using a rifle, a deadly weapon or dangerous instrument, intentionally did place DRV, also known as DRR, in reasonable apprehension of imminent physical injury. All of the above, as set forth, contrary to the form, force, and effect of the statute in such cases, made and provided against the peace and dignity of the State of Arizona, and signed by Ms. Kimberly J. Hunley, Chief Deputy County Attorney. All right, we're going to recess for the day. The admonition, it's a long weekend, 3 days. We're going to come back Tuesday morning. I'm going to order that you be present in the jury room Tuesday morning at 8:30 assemble. Once again, we can't do anything until you're all present, so please all be punctual.
That's it. They're done. 8:30 in the morning, Tuesday. That's Pacific time, which means we have half a day off Tuesday morning. Wow. I'm telling you, this has become a spicy one. This is going to be very interesting. The cross-examination, the impeachment of their witnesses, language barrier might be a big issue here. But the police officers changing the statements, that should not be a language barrier. So I've got to look at that. And that's crazy. It is my birthday weekend. I'm super excited. I want to say thank you. There are so many people who wish me happy birthday. It seems like every 3 seconds a new person wishes me happy birthday. Thank you all. Thank you for the kind words and the well wishes. I'm super excited for this weekend and for the plumbing adventures it will bring. Wonderful. So thank you all. I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend. We are going to, at that note, we're going to wrap things up and be ready for, let's see, Monday we're going to have to do some court hopping. Or maybe we'll talk about this case some more if you guys do any reading. We'll have that option as well. Might follow some news stories. Some crazy things have been happening as well. You never know. We might get a Sarah Boone letter. I mean, crazy things have happened. Might get a Boone letter for my birthday. Angela Knox says, wish we had a mic so we could all sing to you. That'd be awesome. Thumbnail. Not a combined thumbnail on this one, I think. And the reason why, Adam, is because there are some issues on here that are very sensitive and lean political, honestly. And I don't want to have any images appear on there that someone's going to take as a slant one way or the other. This is something we have to walk a fine line on, just because, not that we're not allowed to have opinions, we all are, but I'd like it to be something that everyone can listen and watch to for the facts in the case and the charges in the case, and not get wrapped up in some of the other issues that surround it. So I'll make the thumbnail on this one, but other than that, let's see, my daughter's birthday is Tuesday. Awesome. I'll be back on Monday. We'll be here. We'll be back on Monday. Maybe have a police chase. Keep your fingers crossed. It could happen. All right, tonight when you go home, please hug the people you love. Smile at someone, make their day just a little bit better, and please stay safe till we go live again Monday morning around 8:45-ish. 8:45-ish, which sounds like 9 or 9:15. Yeah, this is a late case. It's several weeks. We're back on the West Coast side, which means all the East Coasters, it gets late in the day. All you West Coasters are like, finally, I don't have to get up early. You guys have a good weekend. Be good to each other. We'll see you after the weekend. See ya. Bye.
Because he's the guy.
This is not Burger King. People do not get to have it their way.